everyone, Don Lemon here. This is CNN's continuing coverage of election night in America, depending on where you are. It's election morning as well. Right now, control of Congress is up for grabs, and we have nail-biters in key races that will determine the balance of power in the Senate and the House. Before we get to all that, we want to go to the House Minority Leader speaking now in Washington, D.C., Kevin McCarthy. Let's go.
And I want to thank the millions of supporters across this country. You know, 2 years ago when I became leader, Republicans had less than 200 seats in the House. That cycle, we picked up 14 seats when every single person said that would be impossible. If you believe in freedom, hard work, and the American dream, these results proved that there is a place for you in the Republican Party. Now tonight, we built upon those gains 2 years ago, and it is clear that we are going to take the House back. In New York, we defeated the Democrat campaign chairman, Sean Patrick Maloney. Sean Patrick Maloney, which will be the first time in over 40 years a DCCC chair lost his re-election. Not only that, but on Long Island, Anthony Diaz-Pasito won a seat that Joe Biden carried by 17 points. We are on the verge of historic gains in New York. In Florida, we gained 4 seats alone. We are poised to sweep the entire state of Iowa. And I will tell you, from the southern border of Monica de la Cruz to Virginia Beach, of Jen Kiggins, to Detroit with John James, and to Houston with Wesley Hunt, we are expanding this party. Now let me tell you, you're out late. But when you wake up tomorrow, we will be in the majority, and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority. Yeah! The American people are ready for a majority that will offer a new direction, that will put America back on track. Republicans are ready to deliver it. It's a new direction towards an economy that is strong, where you can fill up your tank, feed your family, where your paychecks grow and not shrink. A new direction towards a nation that is safe, where communities are protected, law enforcement is respected, and criminals are prosecuted. A new direction towards a future that's built on freedom, where children come first and are taught to dream big. And a new direction towards a government that is accountable, where government works for you instead of against you. Republicans will work with anyone who's willing to join us to deliver this new direction that Americans have demanded. But there's no time to waste. Our work begins now. Let's get America back on track. Thank you, God bless, and good night.
All right, that is the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy speaking in Washington, D.C., really putting a good face on tonight. Thought that they'd have many more gains than they did, but he's touting gains, he says, in New York. The DCCC chair, Sean Patrick Maloney, saying that they have historic wins in New York, Florida, and in Iowa as well, saying that they're going to take back the House, and that by tomorrow or coming soon, that Nancy Pelosi, the current Speaker of the House, he believes will be in the minority. But clearly, as I turn to John Berman here, who is at the Magic Wall, he is like a coach trying to put a good face on basically what they thought would be a good win and getting ahead of himself.
So 2 important things. Number 1, he's ahead of himself.
Yeah.
We have not projected yet that Republicans will take control. Number 2, if they do, and they might,
right,
it is by much smaller of a margin than Kevin McCarthy hoped. Let me just show you. This, what you're seeing right here, is where Republicans are currently ahead. You can see, yes, this would give them control of the U.S. House of Representatives, right, but barely, Don, just by a few seats. This is where the races that we've called. Among the races that we called, they hold a bigger lead. But again, there are still a lot of races out there. And if you look at the competitive seats, these are the seats that CNN with Inside Elections considers to be either toss-ups or tilting one way. Republicans need to win 30 of these to take control. Right now, they're ahead or called in only 33. So again, 30 is their magic number. They're at 33, so barely where they need to be. And I want to also just point out a few other things he said where he's ahead of himself. Let's go to New York. He said, for instance, well, first of all, New York, there are 10 competitive seats, right? You can see Republicans do lead in 8 of these seats, Democrats in 2. This would be a very disappointing night for Democrats in the state of New York. 2 years ago, within these boundaries, Democrats would have held 8 of these seats, Republicans just 2, so you can see why Republicans feel good about New York. He particularly pointed out the district held by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee Chair Sean Patrick Maloney. He is trailing in his race right now. We have not called this race. There is still a fair amount of vote left to be counted there, including in the most Democratic county in this district, Westchester County, still more than 25% of the vote. He's got a smaller lead there than he should. This is a Democrat plus 27 district right now. He's only leading by a little, but it's possible that he does pick up some votes there. A couple other states I want to point out to you here. Again, why Democrats might feel better about certain things. Let's look at Michigan right now. Again, there are 4 competitive seats here. Democrats lead in 2, Republicans lead in 2. 2 years ago, this would have been 3-1. So let's actually focus in on one of these races that we have been watching. This is Elissa Slotkin's district. Actually, this is a disappointment for Democrats if this holds. This is a district that Democrats fought very hard for. Liz Cheney actually went out to Michigan and campaigned for Elissa Slotkin. You can see that she's trailing right now. Let's see where the remaining vote might be. Lansing, which is a highly Democratic area, only 68%. This is a county where Democrats hold a wide margin, so there is vote to be made up by Elissa Slotkin there, but right now she is trailing. We can look at some other states on the map here. Pennsylvania. What's interesting about Pennsylvania is that we've called the Senate race there for John Fetterman already. In the House, you can see 4 competitive districts, Democrats leading in all 4. 2 years ago, they only would have led in 3. One of these districts right here, we'll look up here, is a district held by an incumbent, Matt Cartwright. This is actually a Republican plus 3 district right now, and Matt Cartwright's holding a lead. So Democrats outperforming in some places that Republicans had hoped to make gains, Don.
Yeah, but it's interesting. A lot of the votes are coming from, big areas, big urban areas, right, near the city. So there's a lot of Democratic votes out there. And you are cautioning, it's still early. There are still votes out there. Even though it's 2 in the morning, it's still early because a lot of the votes have not been counted, John.
We are watching this come in. Again, Republicans have a very narrow lead in the House right now.
I was warned that John Berman is going to be my best friend tonight, so John will be my best friend. We'll be buddies tonight throughout the evening and throughout the morning here on CNN. So, John, we just saw just moments ago the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy speaking in Washington, D.C. Inside of that room was our very own Manu Raju. He appeared optimistic, but this is not the night they thought they were going to have, Manu.
Yeah, look, going into the night, McCarthy's people, his team, set a bar. That bar was a 20-seat gain because they believe that if they were to clear picking up 20 seats, that would give them a comfortable governing majority. Anything less than that would be problematic, potentially for Speaker McCarthy, because it would empower the right flank of the conference, often folks who do not listen to leadership and often folks who have their own ideas about exactly what to do. It would empower that element of the Republican conference. What we're seeing here tonight is a very likelihood that the Republicans will not meet that goal of achieving a 20-seat gain. Never mind what McCarthy had hoped for last year, which was a 60-seat gain. Things had changed post-Dobbs, but even even post the decision over abortion, Republicans were still optimistic that coming into today, they could get that majority of more than 20 seats. Right now, as John pointed out to you, Don, that path seems uncertain. If the Republicans do take back the House, and they are still likely to do so, given the amount of territory they're playing in, it could very well be a very narrow majority. So not only could that give problems for McCarthy in trying to pass an agenda, but also trying to just lock down the votes to become Speaker. And that is one of the things he's going to begin tomorrow, Don, is to actually call members, ask for their votes, ensure he has the votes to become Speaker. He almost certainly does have that. But Republicans, even though they may not have the bigger majority as they may ultimately have, they will still have subpoena power and the ability to set the agenda.
Yeah, so everybody stand by, fasten your seatbelts, as they say. Manu Raju at Washington at the House Minority Leader's headquarters, where he spoke just moments ago. So let's slow things down for you and get you caught up here. Everything that we are watching this hour here on CNN, ballots are still being counted all over. Many of the races just too close to call right now. But now I want to take a look at where we stand. This is the balance of power in the House of Representatives. At this hour, control of the House is still in question. The party with at least 218 seats will be in the majority. There it is up on your screen right there. Republicans leading with about 193 seats. They need to win 21 of the competitive seats to gain control. Democrats on the defense with 170 seats at this hour. Now the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Over on the Senate side, the chamber still hangs in the balance. Okay, so let's look at the Senate seats here. Republicans still hoping to gain control. At this moment, all eyes are on 3 Senate races: Wisconsin, Nevada, Georgia. There are still no projections in these states. Of course, there's one in Pennsylvania, as we saw, John Fetterman. In Nevada, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto leading with more than 50% of the vote. Let's take you to Wisconsin now. Democrat Mandela Barnes, he is trailing Republican Senator Ron Johnson by about 40,000 votes. In Georgia, this is a really close one that everyone is watching, probably just as close as they were watching Pennsylvania. Republican Herschel Walker, incumbent Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock, locked in a very tight race, and you can see they are separated by nearly 14,000 votes. Will someone come out victorious tonight? Well, you got to stick around to find out. Or could this contest head to a runoff? We'll have it all for you. This is what's happening in Pennsylvania. As you can see, there is a huge Democratic win here. Democrat John Fetterman, CNN is projecting that he has won the race, defeating Mehmet Oz. This after he had a stroke on the campaign trail, recovering, and after Oprah Winfrey threw major support behind him. Check this out.
Every county, every vote. Every county, every vote. And that's exactly what happened. We jammed them up. We held the line. I never expected that we were going to turn these red counties blue, but we did what we needed to do, and we had that conversation across every one of those counties. And tonight, that's why I'll be the next U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania.
Back now with John Berman. John, we've taken you around the United States, and you're going to give us some of that. And also, let's talk about what's happening in Georgia in just a bit. You saw Pennsylvania there. Yeah. Big win for Democrats.
Let's talk about what this all means for the U.S. Senate. Yeah. The number you're seeing on the screen now is where Democrats are currently ahead. In terms of the races that have already been called, they hold 48 seats. Republicans hold 47. The remaining seats that we're watching very closely: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Let me just quickly take you through all these states to see where we are right now. In Nevada, we only have 62% in. Catherine Cortez Masto, the incumbent Democrat there, is holding on to a small lead, but we need to wait for more vote to come in. In Arizona, the incumbent Mark Kelly is holding a lead there. It looks big, but again, this is largely the early vote that's come in so far. We know that in the presidential race 2 years ago, Donald Trump actually narrowed that lead as the days went on. Joe Biden ultimately did win, but we're going to wait and see for more votes.
For voting of the day, the Republicans usually have the advantage.
They have same-day voting. They tend to have an advantage. Yeah. That's usually the early vote that we've seen at this point in Arizona. In Wisconsin right now, the incumbent Ron Johnson is up on Mandela Barnes. Wow. We have not projected a winner in this race. But let me finish here on Georgia and stay here for a little bit. The key number you need to look at now, Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democrat, is leading but he is underneath the key number of 50%. If neither of these candidates gets to 50%, there will be a runoff in Georgia in December. And right now, you know, they're closer to each other than they are to 50.
But John, it's 50. It's not 50 plus. It's 50.
It's 50 plus one vote.
Plus one vote. Yeah.
So sorry, I left out that one vote. But it's 50 plus one. So he's got to really pad that lead if he's going to avoid a runoff. Let me take a look.
Can you consider him
He's a third candidate in the race. He's got
spoiler.
2% of the vote. If he were not there, you can imagine someone would be over 50. He didn't really play a major role in the campaign in general, other than to be that 2% this morning that may be causing this to go to a runoff. Where is the vote? Okay, 96% reporting, so it doesn't feel like there's a lot left. But of that 4%, right, of that tiny little bit that's remaining, the bigger the circle, the more vote that's out there. The bigger the blue, the more vote that we think is out there. You can see there are bigger, bluer circles left here. There are more red circles,
yeah.
right? But the blue ones are bigger. And let me just circle this here so you remember where that is. And I'll take this down. And then you're left here primarily around the Atlanta area, where we know there's a lot of Democratic vote. Fulton County, Raphael Warnock's got a huge lead, almost 50 points, 95% in. Doesn't feel like there's a lot left, but it could add up. Cobb County, there's actually only 88% in. Again, Raphael Warnock leads by 16 points. He's outperforming what Joe Biden did in that county. Biden won by 14. Warnock is up by about 15, a little bit more. He's outperforming there. Still a little bit of vote there. Let's go to DeKalb, also a very important county. 91% in. A lot, but there's still some vote to come in there. This is a district. He's up by, what, 70? Yeah. 70% also. Outperforming Joe Biden. Biden won this district by 67. So you can see here in Georgia, Raphael Warnock might be able to expand his lead a little bit. Can he get to 50? That might be a little bit harder. So this could go into overtime. And depending on what happens, right, depending on what happens in these other races, if Wisconsin goes red, all of a sudden this number for Republican gets to 48. If Republicans manage to win Nevada, for instance, they get to 49, and then all of a sudden, you know, Georgia, it could all come down to the runoff. Yeah. Democrats would need to win that runoff, Don, in December in order to maintain control of the Senate.
We may not know until sort of the first of the year.
We may not know until December.
This isn't just days. This is weeks before we will know. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that, John Berman. We'll get back to John in just a little bit. So that's where the outstanding votes. Let's go inside of the votes, the outstanding votes, especially in Georgia. Victor Blackwell is at the voter desk with more information. Hi, Victor.
All right, let's pick up where you just left off with John, that question about if there will be a runoff December 6th in the Senate race. We're just getting this in from Gabe Sterling. He runs the operations day-to-day for the Secretary of State's office there in Georgia, tweeted while you were speaking with John Berman, while county officials are still doing their detailed work on counting the votes, we feel it is safe to say there will be a runoff for the U.S. Senate here in Georgia, slated for December 6th. That's a prediction from Gabe Sterling, looking at the numbers there coming in from across the state. Now, let's look at what's still out there. 154 of the 159 counties there in Georgia have completed their counts. If we're looking at a precinct number of the total 2,723 precincts, we've got 2,711 that are complete. So we've got the numbers there. As we look at turnout overall for this, we've got nearly 4 million. Exactly, I'm updating the website from the Secretary of State's office while we're talking here. 3,922,847 ballots cast. Turnout about 56.4%. If we look at the pre-election number of how many votes were cast before Election Day, that 2.5 million, that means that almost 65% of the votes overall were cast before Election Day. As it relates to any questions of voter integrity questions or issues with the count, things are moving very smoothly there. But the headline here, the prediction from the Secretary of State's office, Don, is that there will be this runoff December 6th for that Senate race. Looks a lot like it did after the 2020 election.
Yeah,
Don?
and that is, at this point, Victor, that is a prediction. We have not called that for sure. That is just a prediction. Thank you, Victor Blackwell. We'll get back to Victor in just a moment. He's standing by with news all over the country. We have reporters, correspondents standing by all over the country, including CNN's Nadia Romero standing by in Georgia. Nadia, hello to you. What are the campaigns saying at this hour?
Well, Don, both campaigns, Warnock's and Walker's, are very optimistic about their chances and likely seeing that this could go to a runoff election here in the state of Georgia. Still, though, too close to call right now, and that's to be expected if we look at our recent poll numbers leading up to Election Day. But if we remember back to when the Republican Party first gave the nod to Herschel Walker, many people question if he stood a fighting chance. But we saw that gap between the two start to narrow bit by bit as the months went on. Partly probably because of some of the spending that was done. If you look at the top spending in those Senate races, the Georgia race at number 2, only second behind the Pennsylvania Senate race. And then there were scandals after scandal after scandal in this race that really muddled up that campaign trail. And so I went to Rome, Georgia, which is about 2 hours outside of Atlanta, in the same district that is represented by Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a MAGA supporter, an election denier. And I spoke with Walker supporters in her district. They were clear. They said to me, we don't believe that he potentially paid women in his past to have abortions. One woman told me that she thought it was simply the media trying to ruin his reputation. Another person told me that even if he did do that, that he was sorry, he was a changed man. And then some people were pretty frank, pretty clear, saying that they just wanted to vote for the person with the R next to their name because they wanted the Republicans to regain control of the Senate. And that's why we saw those numbers, the margin between those two candidates really start to close through early voting, and now today, leading through Election Day, and I guess for the morning after now at 2 a.m. So I want you to hear from both of the candidates as they spoke with their supporters.
I'm like Ricky Bobby. I don't come to lose. If you can hang in there a little bit longer. Just hang in there a little bit longer, because something good, it takes a while for it to get better. And it's going to get better.
We are not sure if this journey is over tonight or if there's still a little work yet to do. But here's what we do know. We know that when they're finished counting the votes from today's election, that we're going to have received more votes than my opponent.
So, Don, this could lead to a runoff election, and that's exactly what we saw 2 years ago after 2020, and that's something that Raphael Warnock was able to win last time around. Don?
All right, thank you very much, Nadia, there in Atlanta, Georgia. Appreciate that. So, at this hour, we're standing by for the latest information on the campaign. The votes are still being counted. The balance of the Senate, balance of Congress, up for grabs. Election night in America continues right after a quick break. Hello, everyone. Don Lemon here. It is election night in America, and we have got you covered here. We're going to start with 2 key race alerts. First up in Wisconsin, that's where incumbent Republican Ron Johnson is holding on to a very slim lead over Democrat Mandela Barnes. A very slim lead there, 50.7% to 49.1%. Mandela Barnes with 49.1%, Ron Johnson with 50.7%. Let's take you to Nevada that you see right here as well. Catherine Cortez Masto with 50.9%, Adam Laxalt 46.3%. Those are in the Senate races in Wisconsin and Nevada. 62% of the votes have been counted. So let's go over to Mr. John Berman here at the Magic Wall. So, John, take us inside of this battle for the Senate where we are.
So it's really interesting. Victor, our friend Victor, who's sitting generally not far from us, just told us that Gabe Sterling, who works in the Secretary of State's office in Georgia, told us that this will be a runoff race, that Georgia will not be decided. The 4 races you see on yellow on the map right now are the races that we have not called in the U.S. Senate. Remember, Democrats need to get to 50 to maintain control because Kamala Harris, the vice president, will break a tie. Republicans need to get to 51 if they want to control. So let's see what happens if things go a certain way here. All right, we can play a little game. In Wisconsin, you just showed Ron Johnson leading there. That gets Republicans to 49. You have 3 races left here. In Nevada, you just had the Democratic incumbent, Catherine Cortez Masto, ahead, but let's say that the Republicans are able to win this, okay? That gets them to 50, right? Arizona then becomes crucial. If it goes Democratic, then this runoff right here determines whether or not Democrats maintain control. if Republicans were to win this, that would mean the runoff wouldn't matter. If Democrats were to control or win both in Arizona and Nevada, it means the runoff would not matter in terms of control. So we just don't know yet whether or not the Georgia runoff will determine control of the Senate, but it very much could, depending on which way these states go.
Okay, these states that are outstanding, but Georgia, you've taken us there. Where are the outstanding votes in these two very crucial states?
Get back here. It's going to take a second to reload this map here. We'll go out and we'll take a look at Arizona right now. You see 56% reporting. The most important county by far is Maricopa County. It makes up 61% of the population. You see only 56% of the vote in. This is actually a pretty tight county. Joe Biden won this district by 2.2%. You can see Mark Kelly, the Democrat, has a big lead here. But again, it's which vote has been counted so far that matters the most, and we don't have clear visibility on that just yet.
It's very important.
56%. It's not nearly enough to know. Nevada, you have 63% in. The county that matters most in Nevada is Clark County, which makes up 73% of the vote. It is by far the biggest county. Right now, Catherine Cortez Masto has a lead of, say, 7 or 8 points there. This is a 9-point Democratic district for Joe Biden. So she's actually underperforming Joe Biden here, 74% of the vote in. But you can see in these other counties, there are counties where we have virtually nothing in. Now, look, this is not a big county. I can show you 2 years ago in the presidential race. You're dealing with, 25,000 votes, but those votes add up. When you start getting up these huge leads, this is a Republican plus 40 district in this county. We have no votes in Eureka County. This is a Republican plus 77 district. Lander, Republican plus 61. Now, again, they're not giant counties, but those numbers can add up. The swing county typically in Nevada is Washoe County. We only have 43% of the vote here. Catherine Cortez Masto has a slim lead there. Again, Joe Biden led there by more than 4 points. She's up by 3. So it's the type of vote that might end up mattering most in Nevada and Arizona. What's left to count? We'll try to find that out soon.
All right, John Berman. But John, speaking of Nevada, why don't we head over to Gary Tuchman, who is actually in Nevada, to check in on him. Gary Tuchman, good evening, sir. They're still counting ballots. It looks pretty quiet where you are. It doesn't mean that they're not counting and doing their work behind the scenes.
That's exactly right, Don. It does look quiet behind me, and there were dozens of workers processing the votes here in Clark County, Nevada. Alluding to what John was just talking about, I need to point this out. Clark County, this is one of 17 counties in the state. This is the home of Las Vegas. More than 70% of Nevadans live in this county. Washoe, which John was just mentioning, has about 20%. So between those two counties, 90% of Nevadans live. So these votes are critically important. So right, there's a lot of counties that haven't reported yet, but altogether, those 15 counties comprise less than 10% of the vote. So these are the two key counties. So we are at the election center in Clark County. A short time ago, there were dozens of workers out here processing the votes. They have gone home for the night. They're coming back early in the morning. But back in the corner there, in that secret corner, it's not really a secret, but we have to stay far away from it. That's the tabulation center. And right now, workers are there tabulating the votes that came in today. Now, you may think it sounds like things have been kind of slow here because the polls have been closed for 4.5 hours. These workers are working very well. It's not slow. There's a tradition here in Nevada in this relatively small state. I mean, it's not small anymore. It's 3.1 million people. Just to give you an idea, which is pretty amazing, after World War II, there were 150,000 people who lived in this state. This state has increased by 20 times since World War II. It's doubled in the last 25 years. So the population keeps growing. But anyway, it still has a small state mentality, and they have a tradition here. They wait for all 17 counties to process their votes before they put it on the state list. So that slows it down a little bit. Also, what slowed it down today is when you come to Vegas, you're expecting great weather, sun, and maybe a little chilly. It may be very hot in the summer, but it's usually sunny. You're in the desert. Torrential rain today and winds, tropical storm force winds. And then in Reno, Washoe County in the north, it was snowing today. So the weather was very bad. Nevertheless, we are being told by officials here in Nevada that people really turn out in big numbers. The key, though, is the mail-in balloting. That will be the #1 way to get votes here. And mail-in ballots are allowed to be received by this Saturday. Don, back to you.
Gary Tuchman, Las Vegas, Clark County election headquarters in New York, where we are right now for CNN. And go to Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, hello to you. A lot of narratives being purported in this election, and now it's time to talk to the people who have been talking about those narratives and the polls as well.
Yep, certainly surprising some, upending a lot of those expectations. So to talk about that, let's bring in pollster and communications strategist Frank Luntz. Frank, thanks so much for joining us in these early hours, election morning, which we have now turned into. Let's talk about what's happening in the Senate, because I think it has not met the expectations that Republicans had going into election night. It has surprised even some Democrats that I've been speaking with throughout the evening. What are you watching as we are trying to determine who is actually going to have control of the Senate when all of this is over?
The question is whether the candidates on both sides of the aisle were the best candidates that could have been nominated, could have been chosen. And I think that you're going to see within the next 24 hours a real examination. What happened in Arizona? What happened in New Hampshire? What happened in a number of these states where Republicans had tremendous opportunities and they did not follow through on them. Pennsylvania is another one. Places where Republicans were poised to do better than they did. And I'd agree with you. The level of surprise, the level of disappointment, it's still it feels like it's a reasonably good night for Republicans, but it's nothing like they expected. And they're going to start to do an analysis of, was it the candidate, was it the party, or was it the message that really didn't achieve their objectives?
Yeah, of course, a big question has been the Trump factor in all of that, especially, not even just in Ohio where J.D. Vance did win, but the fact that Republicans had to put so much effort into that race to pull off that victory. I also want to ask you, though, about what we're seeing happening in the House, because you saw Kevin McCarthy came out. It took him a little bit where he came out at the Republican headquarters in Washington tonight to talk about what he believes is going to be a Republican control of the House. But it does make a difference how big of a margin he has in there, right?
Absolutely. The bigger the margin, the easier it is for him to govern. There is a segment of the GOP that is difficult for leadership, a segment that votes no. And if you've got a majority of about 20 seats, it makes it very easy to succeed. If you got a majority of 5 to 10 seats, it means that every vote you're under pressure and you have to ensure that your caucus is behind you. So I got to believe that Republicans are looking at this in the House, knowing that they're going to get the majority, but not the majority that they were hoping to get, what they're going to do in the days and weeks to follow.
Well, and the person that makes the biggest difference for is Kevin McCarthy, because the smaller majority he has, the more power that goes to the figures in that caucus, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene and the others of that wing of the party that have been quick to challenge him on certain aspects of his rule.
And we've seen this with the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi had about a 4-seat majority, and she was pulled to the left by her squad, by her more progressive caucus. So it's not settled yet. I've been following the races, and I still expect the Republicans to end up with a 10 to 15 seat gain. And the question is it 10 seats or is it 15? Because that means everything for the flexibility and the capability of the leader to move the caucus in different directions depending on what the public calls for them.
Yeah, and no one is watching that closer than Kevin McCarthy. Frank Luntz, thanks so much for joining us. We'll check back in with you. Obviously, ballots here are still being counted. There are still a lot of key races that we are watching here, including when it comes to those Senate races in Nevada and Georgia, to see what is going to be happening there. Stay with CNN. We'll be right back.
This mango hint water tastes just like mango.
How can water taste just like fruit?
How can our feet look just like our hands? How can our feet look just like our hands?
For a limited time, new customers get 45% off on our top flavors at drinkhint.com, including our new exclusive online flavor, coconut. Just $1 per bottle. And if you order now, we'll ship it right to your door for free.
Did he just say there's coconut hint?
Hint. Water with a touch of true fruit flavor.
When I first started Ancestry, I had no idea what to expect. Ethnicity inheritance. Nigerian East Central from you. Benin, my dad's side, is 30% Japanese. Thank you, Mom.
I love how it gives you a little bit of history.
Yeah, I feel like reading this, like these are my roots. There's just still so much to discover.
Discover even more during our holiday sale.
I get skeptical when things seem too good to be true. You could say I'm a realist. Take Rakuten. Now, how do they give shoppers cash back on top of deals at their favorite stores?
All that savings sounds like holiday magic.
No, just good sense. Fantastic. Wonderful, Charlie. Love the ribbons. Far be it from me to tell you what to believe in, but I believe in Rakuten.
If you have this, consider adding this, an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan from United Healthcare. Medicare Supplement plans help by paying some of what Medicare doesn't and let you see any doctor, any specialist, anywhere in the U.S. who accepts Medicare patients. So if you have this, consider adding this. Call United Healthcare today for your free decision guide.
Former Vice President Mike Pence joins Jake Tapper for a new CNN town hall to talk democracy, his vision for the Republican Party, and his plans for 2024. Mike Pence, live Wednesday, November 16th at 9.
We will achieve the impossible.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
We need to get out of here. This is a new level of hard.
I got some gold, man! Gold Rush Whitewater, new season, Friday at 9 on Discovery and Discovery Plus.
Why are you back? We have to find a cure.
There's something new out there. It's not you, it's the virus.
What was I supposed to do? Let my child suffer?
Go to mydish.com/showtime or call 855-617-5726.
So how does it feel to win the lottery?
Honestly, the best part so far is meeting you. I'm just such a fan.
I love this episode. The whole season's on demand with Dish.
What's on demand?
Isn't your Hopper connected to the internet? Oh, honey.
Unlock thousands of on-demand titles, streaming apps, and the voice remote, and it's all free.
There. Now, anytime you need your David fix, play My Lottery Dream Home.
I feel so rich.
'Cause you are.
Watch My Lottery Dream Home on demand with Dish.
I'm Lucy Kapnov in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and this is CNN.
All right, we are back, everyone. I'm Don Lemon. This is CNN's special live coverage of Election Night in America. Both chambers of Congress up for grabs at this hour. And just in, we have CNN projections in the House. We're going to take you straight away to the 15th district, Texas's 15th district. Look, it's there on your wall. Republicans have picked up a seat. Monica De La Cruz has defeated the Democrat there, in Texas. In Iowa, the 2nd congressional district Republican Ashley Hinson has won, defeating Liz Mathis. The Republicans holding on to that seat in Iowa. Ashley Hinson winning right now. In Minnesota's 2nd district, Democratic Angie Craig has defeated Republican Tyler Kistner there. This is a hold for Democrats. Democrats hang on to that seat in Minnesota. This is now North Carolina's 13th district that you're looking at. Democrat Wiley Nickel has won over Republican Bo Hines. Wiley Nichols defeats Republican Bo Hines. This is a Democratic pickup there. Taking to Pennsylvania, this is the 8th district. Incumbent Democrat Matt Cartwright has held his seat. And in that state's 17th district, another hole for Democrats there. Chris Delazio has defeated Republican Jeremy Schaefer, defeated Jeremy Schaefer there. So I want you to take a look at the balance of power now. The balance of power, Republicans getting closer and closer to that magic number of 218, but they're not there yet, and we still have lots of runway to go. And another CNN projection just in. That CNN projection is in Alaska. Alaska will remain a Republican stronghold. This is a seat held by incumbent Lisa Murkowski. We cannot yet declare an exact winner because the state uses ranked choice voting. So that's what's happening in Alaska. That is the balance of power. Now in the House, We're going to continue to check in with the balance of power in the House, also as well the balance of power in the Senate. So I want to get straight now to CNN's Poppy Harlow. Poppy is, talking about what we want to hear from the voters. We've been talking a lot about the votes. We've been getting a lot of numbers, but I want to hear from the voters who are out there and what our correspondents are hearing on the ground, Poppy.
Absolutely. I remember many, many nights in Iowa on election night, being one of those reporters in the field. Let's go to Athena Jones. She joins us in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We're going to go to her in a moment, but let's bring in also our analyst before we get to Athena Jones. Thank you, ladies, very much for being with me. We've got Alice Stewart, Maria Cardona, Hillary Rosen, Mia Love. Thank you all. Hillary, let me just begin with what you said on Sunday. It's a lot better than what you thought it was going to be for Democrats. On Sunday, you said, we did not listen to voters in this election. We're going to have a bad night.
Yeah.
What do you think now and why?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to celebrate Kevin McCarthy being Speaker, so it's still not a great night. But look, the numbers are better. And, we learned from the exit polls, economy was the number one issue. We didn't actually have an economic message. But I think the Republican scare tactics didn't work. And, I'm glad about that. I said this morning that I thought that our turnout seemed stronger than anticipated, that the Democrats had done a really good job on early voting, and Republicans were depending on their vote coming out today. That's a big gamble. So we had a couple of things in the field in our favor. And the hidden factor, I think, here really is abortion. It came up as number 2 in the exit poll, very close to the economy as an issue that mattered. And I think that people just didn't want to vote for anti-choice Republicans, even as they're struggling with this, with their family budgets.
And the CNN exit polling did show that abortion dominated for those that voted for Democratic candidates, 44%. Yes. Alice Stewart, you're hearing in real time from a number of big Republican donors. What are they telling you tonight?
They're frustrated with the fact that there was not a larger, as we had anticipated, a larger red wave. Look, it looks as though Republicans will take over the House, but they had expected a lot more. And they made those assumptions based on the state of the economy. And hearing from voters for the last several months, they were frustrated with the economy. And we saw in the CNN exit polls that the condition of the economy was poor or bad, according to 75% of the voters. So Republicans thought they could capitalize on that and send out a message of commitment to America from Kevin McCarthy, that they would really address that. But the big factor, what donors are saying, is that Trump's involvement in this turned off a lot of the independent voters. And look, what we saw, Democrats voted for Democratic candidates, Republicans voted for Republican candidates. As always, it's the independent voters, the squishy middle. They were turned off by Trump's tone. They were turned off by his involvement. They were turned off by his continued election denialism, his support for January 6th, and his hand-picked candidates that were in this race. They were not resonating with people. And the constant thought of the election denial was in the back of independents' minds. And he's going to take credit for some of these Republicans that won, but we could have won much more if we had more moderate candidates and those that trusted the election. And let me just say one quick thing. The reason some of these Republican candidates that were handpicked by Trump got across the finish line, J.D. Vance in particular, was because of Mitch McConnell and his Senate Leadership Fund. They contributed over $300 million to these candidates to help them get across the line. And it's a tribute to Mitch McConnell and not Donald Trump.
I mean, that's a good point. And that's the point Caitlin brought up earlier in the Vance race in particular. So, Milove, to you, I mean, the question now is November 15th is supposed to be a big surprise, not likely a surprise to most, but surprise announcement from former President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. But if Georgia goes to a runoff, as Gabe Sterling in the Secretary of State's office in Georgia is predicting it, well, we have not made that projection yet at CNN. But if that happens, what does Trump do? Like, in terms of what it means for that race in Georgia.
I think Trump
what it means
should
for the
stay
party.
home. That is always the answer. He's got enough problems to deal with. He should stay home. There's no reason why Dr. Oz shouldn't have won that race. He was doing well. He was doing well with independents. He was doing well.
Yeah, but most voters thought he didn't even live in the state long enough. That's what they said in the exit polling.
Right.
You know, at
And
the end of the
abortion
day,
mattered in
I think that everybody went home. And I do believe that the fear-mongering didn't work on both sides. Democracy on the left, election fraud on the right. What I believe happened is both sides failed. One side failed to talk about the real issues that people were facing. It's still, I believe, inflation, the economy, gas prices. And then Republicans failed to have an articulate message on how they're going to fix it. So when you go to the polls, you don't have, you have this idea of, okay, what is going to happen here? Do I have someone that I trust that can fix these problems, or do I just go home? And I think that's what I feel happened.
Yeah. Maria, you get first bite at the apple on the next one, all right? I gotta get to my colleagues here, get some breaks, and stand by everyone. The votes are still being counted at this hour. It is a nail biter in some races, keeping us from calling which party will control Congress. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I'm Don Lemon. We're back now with election night in America, and now time for a key race alert. Let's look at it. This is up on your screen now. The races that we want to talk about now. Georgia, as you can see, still very close there, 49.1% for Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democrat. Herschel Walker, 48.8%. And then you have, of course, Chase Oliver far behind, 2%. We're told that this is, at least in Georgia, they're saying that this will probably go to a runoff. CNN has not projected that. We're still waiting for the votes to come in. Also in Wisconsin there, the incumbent, Ron Johnson, a Republican, 50.6% to Mandela Barnes, a Democratic challenger, 49.2%. 93% of the vote is in, but we're still waiting for the final count and a final projection there in Wisconsin. Okay, now let's move on to Nevada. We're going to get to Nevada. The incumbent, Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto, 50.1%. Adam Laxalt, the Republican challenger, 47.6%. There is still a long way to go, 47%, I should say. Still a long ways to go here with just 65% of the estimated vote in. So those are the projections now. I want to head over to Harry Inton, who is at the voter desk here. Harry, here's my question. I don't want to say Democrats are doing well. They're doing better than expected. Not a bad night for them, but it's got to be a sigh of relief here.
I think it is a sigh of relief, you know, and I think essentially what happened was, you know, you look at our exit poll and you say, okay, the vast majority of voters, the clear majority of voters disapprove of the job that Joe Biden was doing. That was true in the pre-election polls, and that was true in our exit poll as well. But the question is, look at those voters who said that they somewhat disapproved of the job that Joe Biden was doing. And look at how they voted for Congress. They were a small group, but they're an important group. And you see that Democrats actually had a slight advantage with them, Don.
They're just 10%, somewhat disapprove, and that made a difference, you believe?
That made the big difference, because if the idea was if you put that somewhat disapprove together with the completely disapprove, strongly disapprove, then that got you to majority. But it turns out that 10%, they actually chose Democratic candidates instead of Republican candidates in their House vote. But I don't think it's just about Joe Biden, right? It's also about the important issues. And going into this election, everyone was saying it's inflation, and it's inflation. And yes, inflation was number one, but abortion was considerably higher in our exit polls, at least as the most important issue, than I think a lot of the pre-election polls had. And look at the folks who said that abortion was, in fact,
25%.
Correct. Look at those voters. How did they vote? They voted overwhelmingly for Democratic candidates, overwhelmingly by a 40-plus point margin. And when you look at those who said inflation was the number one issue, they too said by an overwhelming margin that they, in fact, were going to go for Republican candidates instead. But those two groups kind of canceled out. So, yes, inflation was such a big issue, but abortion kind of canceled it out.
If you look at what's up on your screen now for inflation, Republicans, 71%, the most important issue to their vote.
Yeah. If you look at it, it's 71%, but that 71% was canceled out by inflation, by the abortion issue, in which a similar percentage voted for Democratic candidates. So those two issues really canceled out, according to our exit poll, which was not what we were seeing in the pre-election polls, where inflation was the runaway most important issue.
Look, they're still counting the votes all over, but I got to tell you that Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, they're still very close. Arizona, we're still waiting for the results to come in there. They're still counting the votes, and we still have much more to go. We're going to be back in just a moment here. Election night in America continues right after a quick break. I'm Don Lemon. You know what that music means. That means it's CNN's Election Night in America coverage, and we've got a lot for you. At this hour, control of Congress still at stake. The balance of power in the House has not been decided. Many of the races really just too close to call at this point. But now we're going to take a look at where we are. So let's look at, this is the balance of power in the House right now. First to the House, the party with at least 218 seats will be in the majority. And you can see there, Republicans now have 195 seats. Democrats, 174. Republicans must win 19 consecutive seats, a handful of seats to gain control. Democrats, 174. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy spoke just last hour. He was optimistic, maybe a little bit too optimistic about his party's chances of taking control. Watch this.
Thank you to everyone who voted Republican for the very first time. Now tonight, we built upon those gains 2 years ago, and it is clear that we are going to take the House back.
All right, so that is the Democratic side. Now let's look at the balance of power over on the Senate side. That chamber still hanging in the balance. Republicans still hoping to gain control, and at this moment, all eyes are on three Senate races. Wisconsin, Nevada, and Georgia. There's still no projections here. Take a look at what's happening in Nevada. This is the incumbent, Catherine Cortez Masto, 50.1% to Adam Laxalt, the Republican challenger, 47.0%. He started surging in the polls very late into the game. We'll see if that momentum will carry him through. The Democrat leading in that race right now, though. Let's get you to Wisconsin. Democrat Mandela Barnes still trailing Republican Senator Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson, 50.6% of the votes. He's the incumbent. Mandela Barnes, Democratic challenger, 49.2% of the vote. There is Georgia up on your screen. Everyone watching Georgia really closely. The Republican Herschel Walker there with 48.8%, trailing just a little bit with 96% of the estimated vote in. Raphael Warnock, who's the incumbent, 49.1% of the vote. But here's, if no one gets to 50% in this race, that could go to a runoff. The head of elections there saying it probably will be a runoff. CNN is not declaring that yet. We still have a lot of runway to go here before we make that declaration. Let's go on to Pennsylvania now. A huge night for the Democrat there. John Fetterman is the projected winner for the Senate race in Pennsylvania, defeating the TV doctor Mehmet Oz. Standing by right now, our very own doctor of the magic wall here, and that is none other than Mr. John Berman. John, where are we when it comes
I just wanted to leave this up here in the U.S. House. You can see where Republicans are currently ahead. These aren't all the races that have been called, just where they're ahead. You can see they would get the majority, but barely, Don, like by 2 seats.
Wow.
That's nothing compared to what Republicans were hoping for tonight. They're on path to get the majority again, but barely. And when you think about the competitive races here, we think there are about 82 competitive races. Democrats are leading in 49, Republicans in 33. Republicans need to win 30 of these to take control. Again, they're on path to do it, but just barely. We'll come back to the House in a little bit, Don. Let's focus on the Senate now for a while, because I think that's where a lot of the main interest is. So you look at the U.S. Senate. You can see Democrats leading in 51, Republicans leading in 49. In terms of what's called, it's tied 48 to 48. You can see the 4 remaining states to call are Georgia, which, by the way, Gabe Sterling, who works in the Secretary of State's office, says is going to go to a rundown. I'll come back to that in just a second. Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. In Wisconsin, the Republican Ron Johnson is ahead narrowly. We haven't called that race yet. In Nevada, we have about 65%, and we just got some more vote in from Nevada. Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat, is ahead by about 3 points there. And in Arizona,
tightening, right?
It's tightening ever so slightly. And in Arizona, 56% in, Mark Kelly's got a lead of about 15 points. Now, what I wanted to show you here is how this could change over the next several days and why we would expect it to change and maybe tighten. Mark Kelly's got a lead here, 56% in. But let me take you back to the presidential race 2 years ago. That was Mark Kelly's race there. This is the presidential race. Yes, Joe Biden won by about 10,000 votes. It was close, right? But we can do a timeline here where I can walk you through the course of the evening. Let me go back to the very beginning. So at 10:15, which was the first time we saw votes, Joe Biden was ahead by 218,000 votes. That was with 72% in. He was ahead by 218,000. That feels comfortable. But then by 5 a.m., he had actually grown it ever so slightly to 130,000. The next day, though, it starts to drop, 93,000. By Thursday, it's down to 68,000. Then on Sunday, it's down to 18,000, less than a 1-point lead. And it's not called, basically, till a week after that. And the reason I wanted to show you that is, yes, right now, you have Mark Kelly in the lead there by 15 points. But that could shrink. It shrunk for Joe Biden as more votes came in. And right now for Mark Kelly, only 56% was in. When we showed you that first Joe Biden lead, there was more. There was actually more vote counted more quickly in Arizona 2 years ago than now.
It also depends where the outstanding votes are.
It does depend where the outstanding vote is, but in Arizona, Maricopa County makes up about 60% of the vote. This is the swingiest of the swing counties, and they have 55%. And so we know that a lot of that vote is going to come in Maricopa County.
The swingiest of the swing counties.
The swingiest of the swing counties, Don.
All right, John Berman, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're going to get check back with John. Of course, John has all the numbers going inside the vote. Let's get now to Athena Jones. She's live in Pennsylvania. Athena, hello to you. We heard from John Fetterman moments ago after he beat Mehmet Oz. What did he say?
Well, he talked about how important it was to campaign in every county in the state of Pennsylvania. 67 counties. This is something that one of the first things he said when he spoke to his crowd of supporters, saying, I didn't expect that we would turn every single one of those counties red, but it was important to have the conversation in those counties. He also talked about being proud of what he ran on, things like protecting a woman's right to choose, raising the minimum wage, fighting for a union way of life, and protecting, or he said, standing up for our democracy. But as we've been saying for the last several days and weeks now, this Senate seat in Pennsylvania was Democrats' best opportunity to pick up a seat. It's currently held by the retiring GOP Senator Pat Toomey. This was the most expensive race in the country by a long shot, with nearly $375 million spent on this race, and Democrats succeeded in flipping this seat. Now, we are in Bethlehem. This is in Northampton County. You're talking about swing counties, swing states. This is a swing county in a swing state. This is a county that has generally been known as a bellwether county, one that ends up usually tracking with the statewide result, and that is what we saw again in this election. Fetterman won here in this county by more than 6,000 votes. So once again, as Northampton went, so went Pennsylvania. Now, how did he do it? He did have a lot of help. He had big help from big names like President Joe Biden, who was here campaigning for him, as well as former President Barack Obama, Vice President Kamala Harris, and that big endorsement from Oprah Winfrey over the weekend. And in fact, we just learned a few minutes ago that President Biden has sent Fetterman a congratulatory text this morning, one of his many congratulatory calls. So that's one of the ways they managed to pull it out here in Pennsylvania. Don?
All right. Athena Jones, live from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Appreciate that. Caitlin, we have been covering these elections since the start of our show, CNN This Morning. And the former presidents, the current president, they have been all over the place campaigning for their particular candidates.
Yes, but President Biden only went to certain places. You've seen he has been very busy tonight, busier than some White House aides had been expecting, certainly some Democrats, when it came to congratulatory calls that he was placing from the White House tonight. One was a text to John Fetterman. You can see here many calls that President Biden was making tonight. So let's talk about all of this. You know, White House officials were saying, we are not so hopeful about the House. We'll see what happens with the Senate. And with Fetterman, I mean, the president got what he wanted with a Fetterman victory and Josh Shapiro at the top of the ticket for the governor's race.
You know, in this century, the presidential approval has been a driving force, especially in Senate races. In 2018, Republicans did not win a single Senate seat in the state where where Trump was at 48 or below. In 2010, Democrats lost 13 of 15 in states where Obama was at 47 or below. Tonight, it is possible that Democrats are going to win a bunch of states where Biden's rating was equivocal or not really so good. I mean, in Pennsylvania, I think it was 46. Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, all down in the low, in the 40% range. And so I think what we saw in many ways was what I called in October a double negative election. A majority of voters said they disapproved of Biden, and that did exert a downward pull on Democratic candidates. But the impact of that was bounded by the fact that a majority of voters, a bigger number of voters, were unfavorable toward Trump. And that allowed Democrats to hold together more of the anti-Trump coalition from 18 and 20 than you would have expected from the attitudes about Biden and the economy, and certainly allowed them to dodge the worst and maybe even get a surprisingly good outcome.
Yeah, and Fetterman is running above Biden in 2020 in Pennsylvania in the race, and how we saw it tonight before it was actually called for him.
No, I think in the end, Pennsylvania voters just liked Fetterman, right? I mean, there was so much doomsday predictions after his debate. He stumbled in the debate. He had some health problems because of the stroke. But in the end, he was always leading in most of the polls. You had President Obama, former President Obama, go in and campaign for him. That was one of the states that Biden could go to as well because he's a Scranton kid. And so in the end, it ended up all working out for Democrats. And listen, Democrats were sort of cautiously optimistic going into tonight. They are gleeful now tonight, given that I think they expected to have lost the House by now, that it would be much more definitive that the House was gone. It's not quite clear. And then what we're seeing so far from some of these races out west, Nevada, Cortez Masto looks stronger, I think, than a lot of people predicted.
She's the most endangered
Exactly.
incumbent Democratic senator right now.
With all the individual aspects of any one of these candidates, I think that the core story is that even despite 75% saying the economy is only fair or poor, 55% disapproving of Biden, the core anti-Trump coalition of 18 and 20 held together more than people expected. I mean, Democrats won women. They won young people. They split college-educated whites and won them in the key states. And especially the erosion among non-white voters
didn't happen,
was not nearly as big as Republicans anticipated. I mean, Democrats still won. There was a lot of talk before the election that they were going to see, I think the phrase from Axios was a political realignment in real time among non-college, non-white voters. Democrats won 2/3 of them in the national exit poll, and more than that in many of the key states. So yes, there was erosion around the edges of this coalition, which you would expect with 9% inflation. But the story was more of the Democratic coalition held together, and that allowed them to cut their losses in a year when the basic structural views about Biden and the economy would have predicted blowout.
Well, and so much has had to do with also Mehmet Oz being the candidate for Republicans. I've gotten a number of expletive-laced texts from Republicans who believe Dave McCormick would have been able to beat.
Why wasn't McCormick the nominee?
Because of Donald Trump.
Trump, of course, that race, that was a margin of about 900 votes. I do wonder one thing, the White House will be listening to this closely, is does this change the conversation that had been happening conventionally around Democrats about whether or not Biden should run in 2024?
Listen, I think if you're Biden, you're sort of overperforming. And listen, if it looks like Donald Trump is going to win, I think the conventional wisdom is that Biden is still the strongest candidate against Donald Trump. It looks like he's probably going to announce next week.
There's a question for Republicans here for Donald Trump, too. I mean, there were 5 states that made Joe Biden president, 5 states that flipped from Trump 16 to Biden in 20. It is possible that the Donald Trump chosen nominees in all 5 states are going to lose. They lost in Wisconsin, they lost in Pennsylvania, they lost in Michigan. Walker is not certain in Georgia, and it's possible they will lose both of those seats, the governor and the senator in Arizona. A normal political party would look at that and say, maybe this isn't the formula to get us back those states that decided the president. Do any Republicans get up, if that's the outcome, and say, Donald Trump led us down the wrong path?
Well, I think you're going to hear them say, look at Ron DeSantis down in Florida, who absolutely crushed it, did quite well among all the groups that typically vote for Democrats. So we'll see. So far, Republicans have not been able to quit Donald Trump, despite what happened in 2020, despite what happened tonight. So we'll see.
He's got the primary voters, clearly not the general election voters. We will keep watching all of these races very closely. Don, of course, we're still waiting to see what happens in Georgia, what happens in Nevada, and also what's happening in that Arizona governor's race.
Right on. Very interesting conversation with you guys over there. So I've got Victor Blackwell here with me. He's at the voter desk. He's following news or information from around the country. But you have some news on Arizona right now. What do you have, Victor?
Yeah, specifically in Maricopa County, where, of course, the largest tranche of voters are in that state. We're expecting a batch of votes to come in at the top of the hour, 4 a.m. Eastern. Of course, we've learned, though, from state officials and officials in Maricopa County specifically, that they're not expecting to complete the count of all the votes until Friday. So this will stretch over several days. But we know that there was this problem earlier in the day that actually went to a judge to have to figure out what to happen in that case. There were some printing issues with tabulation centers. It affected about 60 out of the 223 voting sites. Republicans asked for voting to be extended beyond the 7 p.m. local to 10 p.m. A judge determined that there was no evidence that any voter who wanted to come and vote was denied the opportunity, or that this would have any major impact on the integrity of the vote, so denied that request. But what we know is, as we're looking at this very crucial race for the Senate and for the governor's office, that we are expecting votes to come in at the top of the hour. Kari Lake, the Republican nominee for governor in Arizona, she, in a speech, said that made some connection between her debunked claims about a stolen election in 2020 and linked it to the mistakes, the problems that happened today. Of course, there's no evidence that any of this was nefarious at all. And she tweeted just a couple of moments ago something that seems benign here. She says the party's not stopping until the last legal vote is counted. But earlier in this evening, we did hear her try to make that connection between her lies throughout the season and the problem that happened that was corrected earlier today in Arizona.
Yeah, they always say the last legal vote to be counted, but they have to remember a judge legally said that there was no issue when it comes in, did not keep the polls open, and there were no issues with the voting. Thank you very much for that. John Berman, so take us inside what's happening in Arizona as you have this of Mark Kelly and Blake Masters.
So Victor was just talking about the state of Arizona overall. We know that 56% of the vote has reported right now, and Mark Kelly, the incumbent Democrat, has a lead of about 15 points. What Victor just told us is we can expect them to report the counting of more votes in Maricopa County. Again, it makes up about 60% of the overall vote in Arizona. So the majority of the vote there. Right now, Mark Kelly holds a lead of about 20 points there. All right? Let me write that down. I'm going to put D plus 20. D plus 20 in Maricopa County with 56% in, which mirrors the state. I want to take you back 2 years and show you where that lead was roughly about now for Joe Biden at this time. That's why I'm going to leave that up there. So let's go back to the presidential race, and we'll hit the clock right here, and I'll take you back to roughly 5 a.m. Wednesday. No, let's go to 10:15 p.m., so a little bit earlier. That was with 77% reporting. Joe Biden only led in Maricopa County with 77% in by 10 points. Right now, with 56% in, Mark Kelly's got a 20-point lead.
Wow.
So let's wait and see how much vote from Maricopa County comes in. If you get a higher percentage of a vote and Mark Kelly has still got a lead, maybe not 20, but still more than Joe Biden at 10, that might bode well for Mark Kelly as the night goes on. See what I mean? I'm trying to show you how this could develop as the night goes on there. So that's one thing to look for. We're waiting for that vote in Maricopa County. Let me just quickly show you Wisconsin, because we did get some more vote in Wisconsin as well. Let me put up the, oh, I have to get out of this. Let me put up the Senate race there now. In Wisconsin, you see Ron Johnson's got a lead of 1.4%, 93% in. We have not called this race. Why? There's still some vote to be counted in Milwaukee. Just 79% of the vote counted in Milwaukee. Mandela Barnes has got a lead there of almost 40 points, which is just about where Joe Biden was. Unclear whether there's enough votes left in Milwaukee for him. Yeah, it's hard to tell whether there's enough vote for him there to close that gap. 38,000 votes right now, the lead for Ron Johnson here. But that's where the vote still remains. So Mandela Barnes could tighten. I'm not sure whether he can tighten enough. And in Georgia, which we haven't talked about in a while, we haven't called this race. But what we have heard from the Secretary of State's office is that it is likely to go to a runoff. Raphael Warnock is in the lead, but he's only got 49.1% of the vote. The key number here is 50. If no one gets to 50 plus 1, as you pointed out, 50% plus 1, it goes to a runoff. That runoff would be on December 6th. Right now, according to the Secretary of State's office, that's where this is headed, even though Raphael Warnock holds the lead and could expand this lead, but maybe not get to 50%. You got about 5% left in Fulton County, which is heavily Democratic. Cobb County, which leans Democratic, 88%. And in some of these other counties, DeKalb, you have about 10% left to count. So Raphael Warnock could build on his lead, but it'd be tough for him to get to 50.
If you're looking at that, what is that about my math? Is that about 12,000 votes? I mean, Joe Biden won, what, 12,000?
So Raphael Warnock leads by 11,000 votes.
Votes. That's what.
You want to play this game?
Lost by.
Joe Biden won by 11,000 votes. It looks very similar.
I got the math right.
You have a great memory, like a steel trap, they say.
Yeah, the phone call, it sticks in your mind.
That's right.
All right, John Berman, appreciate it.
All right,
thank you, sir. So we are waiting on these undecided Senate races as votes are still being counted, as you can see. Plus, news on the big governor's races all across this nation. This is CNN's special live coverage, election night, election morning in America. Hello, everyone. Don Lemon here. This is continuing coverage of CNN's election night in America, and we have a CNN projection. So here we go. Democrat Josh Green will be Hawaii's next governor. He is a projected winner. He's going to hold as a Democrat there. That is a hold for Democrats in Hawaii. In the meantime, Democrats managing to outperform in some races for governor all across the country. First up, you can see Michigan there with Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer winning her re-election bid against Trump-endorsed Republican Tudor Dixon. Democrats have flipped 2 gubernatorial seats so far, one in Massachusetts with a historic win by Maura Healey. She will become the nation's first out lesbian governor. Maura Healey, nation's first out lesbian governor in the state of Massachusetts. And in Maryland, let's take you to Maryland now. That's where Wes Moore defeated the far-right Republican Dan Cox to become the first African-American elected governor there. Overall, though, GOP still holding on to some top jobs in the majority of the Senate with a history-making victory of their own in Arkansas. That's where Sarah Huckabee Sanders is projected to be the first woman elected governor. Remember, her father was a governor there as well. So it's an interesting story for her. Republicans also winning a few other big races. Florida's Ron DeSantis, Georgia's Brian Kemp, Greg Abbott in Texas, all defeating their Democratic challengers. The wall all red there except for the surrounding blue framing. So there you go. CNN's John Berman. I'm walk over to the magic wall. So here we go. Can we talk about Arizona?
Let's talk about Arizona. Katie Hobbs is the Secretary of State there, and Kari Lake is this election-denying Republican who has the support of Donald Trump there. Media-hating
former anchor.
Republican, former television anchor. Not that there's anything wrong with being a television anchor, Don. So she's trailing Katie Hobbs, the Secretary of State, by almost 11 points. But one thing I do want to point out there, again, just 56% in. We've been talking about the Arizona Senate race. She's outperforming the Senate candidate Blake Masters, who was at 41.4%. Let me just put that up again. She's at 44.7%. She's running about 3 points better. She's about 3 points better, and that could be the difference in this state, which has been decided by very close margins in the past. When you're talking about, for instance, the Senate race there 2 years ago, Mark Kelly won just by 3 points when he ran 2 years ago against Martha McSally. So if you extrapolate that out to the governor's race this year, that 3-point difference for Kari Lake that she's running ahead of Blake Masters, that could be decisive. We're going to have to wait and watch how she does there.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Is she outperforming Trump?
She is, well, no, not yet, because Trump, you'll remember, Trump in this state 2 years ago got 49%, but that was with 99%. And the problem right now, where we are in Arizona, at this point in the night, it's just impossible for us to tell where she is, relatively speaking. The other governor's race that I think is interesting, that tells an important story tonight, is in New York. Now, we have called this race for the Democrat Kathy Hochul, but look how close it is right now. That's, that's about a 6-point margin in a state that Joe Biden won 2 years ago by, you can see 23 points. It's a 23-point Biden state. And right now, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate is about 6 points ahead. And even though the Democrats will maintain the governor's mansion, it may have had an impact on the House races. We're watching the House races in New York very closely. I can put the competitive seat filter in here, and you can see of the 10 competitive seats in New York State, Republicans lead in 8 of them, Democrats in 2. You go back to 2020, it was 8 Democratic, to Republicans. So Republicans may be on track to flip a number of seats. You know, it's a 6-point seat swing in the state of New York alone. And if I take this off right now, you talk about that 6-seat swing, that's the margin, right? Yeah. You give those 6 seats to the Democrats, and they would be on track to maintain control of the U.S. House of Representatives. So what's happening in New York could be decisive in terms of the House, and it might be the governor's race that's driving that, even with Republicans losing.
Can you look at Suffolk County and to see what's happening there?
Why do you care so much about Suffolk County?
Because I live in Suffolk County, but also because of Lee Zeldin. Lee Zeldin was the congressman in Suffolk County.
This is Suffolk County, right? And this is a seat that's actually about tied between Democrats and Republicans 2 years ago. He's got a huge lead. There. He's got a huge lead in Suffolk County. I'll go back to the presidential race so you can see that right there. And you can see Donald Trump and Joe Biden were tied, neck and neck. And in the governor's race right now, Lee Zeldin way ahead of Kathy Hochul there.
You notice I'm noticing here?
What are you noticing?
There's a cup of coffee here because John Berman is the man of the hour. He's going to be
Cheers. Cheers. Bottoms up.
John Berman, thank you very much. Look, we're getting new projections, and the votes are still being counted in these undecided Senate races. The control of Congress still up for grabs. This is election night / morning in America. And there you see it. There's a CNN projection, and it is in Michigan's 7th. Elissa Slotkin, a Democrat there, has won re-election in Michigan's 7th congressional over Tom Barrett. This was a tight race. Republicans had hoped to pick up. They did not. The Democrats will hang on there. And you may also remember Republican Liz Cheney campaigned for Elissa Slotkin in Michigan, and Elissa Slotkin is the projected winner there. And Oregon's 4th District Democrat Val Hoyle wins another hold for Democrats there, another hold for Democrats in Oregon. Now let's take you now to the balance of power. See what the balance of power is happening now in the House of Representatives. Republicans remain in the lead, but it is tight. They remain in the lead with 195. 218 obviously is the one that's needed. That's the magic number. Democrats 176. They picked up 3. Republicans 8 pickups so far. So let's head out now to CNN Sunland Safadi and Capitol Hill. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi weighing in on the performance of Democrats tonight. What is she saying? Good morning.
That's right, Don. Certainly. Good morning to you. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi out with a new statement just in the last hour, acknowledging in essence that Democrats in the House tonight have done much better than expected, didn't get quite the shellacking that many Democrats on Capitol Hill were bracing for. She says in a statement, quote, while many races are too close to call, it is clear that House Democratic members and candidates are strongly outperforming expectations across the country. As states continue to tabulate the final results, every vote must be counted as cast. Many thanks to our grassroots volunteers for enabling every voter to have their say in our democracy. And Republicans on Capitol Hill, Don, are certainly sweating this out much more than they had expected. The fact that these races are tighter than expected, the numbers as they currently stand right now, of course, have Republicans on the path to winning a majority in the House, but it's not done yet. And certainly their majority potentially will be narrower than they had expected. And we heard from House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy in the last hour, and he claimed a premature victory of sorts, taking an early victory lap. He said that he predicted that Republicans would win the House. He did not comment on that smaller than expected margin that they likely would have. And he said he read, in essence, the results as a mandate of sorts for the House Republicans going forward, saying, quote, work begins now. We need to set America back on track. So, Don, some dashing of expectations, high expectations that House Republicans had going into tonight. Still many key races, of course, in the House yet to be called.
Sunland Safadi at the Capitol, our nation's capital. Thank you, Sunland. We appreciate that. Poppy Harlow, let's go ahead over to Poppy now. Poppy, a lot has been said about what would happen this election night in America. Yeah. There are a lot of narratives, just not what people thought.
You've been saying it the whole time, Don.
Yeah.
It's the voters.
Yeah.
It's all about how they vote. You know, Republicans can celebrate some big gains from Latino voters, particularly tonight, this morning, in Florida. For the first time in 2 decades, Miami-Dade turned red, with Republican Governor Ron DeSantis winning handedly there. Miami-Dade is home to a large Cuban population. Another traditional Democratic stronghold won by DeSantis is Osceola County, a majority Latino county south of Orlando with a heavy Puerto Rican population. It's not clear whether the Latino vote is tracking in favor of the GOP outside Florida. All right, we've got great folks to talk about this and a lot more. Maria, promised I'd go to you first. This is what you wanted to talk about, but... Yes. But, yes. Democratic strategist, you didn't want to talk about the Florida part.
Well, what I said was I will leave Florida out
but
because...
we can't.
Well, meaning that I concede that in Florida, we continue to lose ground with Latinos, and we absolutely need to do a much better job there. I think the Democratic Party needs to focus on Florida in a way that we certainly did not this time around. But I will say that nationally, the Latino vote is a huge storyline for Democrats, especially because one of the big narratives coming from Republicans is that they were going to try for this red wave to include the Latino vote nationally in Texas, in Arizona, in Nevada, in Colorado, in California, and that just it has not borne reality as of now. We wouldn't be where we are with our margins holding on right now, and we know that there's still a lot of more votes to come in, if we weren't breaking 2-to-1, 3-to-1 in Arizona with Latino voters.
I think I hear you, I do, but I think the question is Florida an example, Alice, of what may be to come for the rest of the country or more of the country? There was that Wall Street Journal reporting out just, this week that showed that Latino voters were breaking more for Republican candidates this cycle, more than double where they broke for Trump, and a similar pattern for Black voters.
Clearly, and Maria has been touting the Latino vote for quite some time, and it's impressive to see them come out in the large numbers that they have. I think Florida sets a tone for what's to come ahead based on what Ron DeSantis did. In his way of campaigning, he didn't need Donald Trump. He kept Donald Trump at arm's distance. He focused on the policies that are important to the people of Florida. He talked about how he helped create jobs, he increased tourism, how he handled natural disasters, and his ability to galvanize voters, independent voters, on the policies. That's important. And hearing from Republicans, not just people that aren't Trump supporters, but Trump allies. I'm getting a lot of the same expletive tweets or texts from a lot of, as Caitlin is. Yeah. Look, they're telling me that Donald Trump is an anchor on the party. It is time to turn the page on him. They are tired of donating money to the Republican Party to pay his legal bills. They're ready to move on. Yeah. My take on this, Donald Trump went into tonight expecting to be the kingmaker. He has lost his crown, and it's time for him to get off the throne.
Mia, you're a former Republican congresswoman. You called today's election an opportunity to change the nation's trajectory. What does that look like?
First of all, people have to get away. Republicans have to just get away from Donald Trump. If you look at all of the gubernatorial candidates, all of the candidates he supported lost. And the ones that he actually went after and attacked, Brian Kemp, Ron DeSantis, they won. He is not a crutch. He's actually, he actually hurts these candidates. I believe he hurt Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. It's time for new leadership and to talk about, again, the things that Americans really care about. And I do believe that Florida is an example of what we are going to see. And it's going to continue to break Republican as long as we still have a president that, I'm sorry, still has not been able to handle the inflation issue, has not been able to handle the gas prices continuing to go up. Energy independence is a big issue for the United States.
What do you, Paul, as a Democrat here, I wonder what you make of all of that. And then also, if you flip it to the Democrats, Fetterman coming in running ahead of where Biden was in 2020. I think the question on that side is that because of the candidate he was and who he was, or is that indicative more broadly for the party?
Well, there is, Florida aside, and Governor DeSantis really should be congratulated for a remarkable success there. The most powerful emotion in life, the most wonderful emotion, it's not joy, it's relief. It's relief. Democrats feel such relief right now. Why? Because it's across the country. John Fetterman ran a great campaign. And by the way, so did Josh Shapiro, the new governor-elect of Pennsylvania, who's a rising star.
Who told us on the program this week, by the way, this isn't about Biden, this isn't about the National Party, this is about Pennsylvania.
Yes, and it was. And Pennsylvania, I've worked a lot in Pennsylvania, and I think Fetterman really embodied sort of the best of that state, which is grit. You know, yeah, he got knocked down, but he got back up, and he said that. That was his closing message.
Yeah, he did today.
And boy, that resonates with Pennsylvanians. And, you know, Pittsburgh hates Philly, and Philly hates Pittsburgh, and the rural T hates the cities. The one thing every Pennsylvanian agrees on, they hate New Jersey. And Donald Trump dropped in some TV knucklehead from New Jersey.
Let's stay away from no name calling here.
Well, no, knucklehead is an affectionate term.
No, the exit polls did show that most voters in Pennsylvania did not think that Mehmet Oz lived in the state long enough. Thank you all.
Thank you, Donald Trump.
Stay here. We're going to be back very soon as we watch these undecided Senate races. We've just received a huge vote count from Nevada. That is a critical state right now. Stand by. It is next in our special live coverage.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Don Lemon, and we have a major key race alert, and it's in Nevada. More votes have just come in, and the Senate race has gotten significantly closer. Look at those margins right there. Democratic incumbent Catherine Masto-Cortez Cortez Masto, I should say, is leading, but it is still within 1 point. Catherine Cortez Masto still leading there. Head over now to the Magic Wall with Mr. John Berman. Boy, it is tight, John, in Nevada.
Go. Yeah, let's go into Nevada right now, leading by 0.6%. But, Don, it's just 4,500 votes. The Democratic incumbent's lead right now is 4,500 votes. And I want to point out there are some counties we haven't heard from at all here. Now, look, let's talk about Nye County in Nevada. It's a tiny county. It just makes up 1.5% of the vote, but we have 0% in. Let's look what Donald Trump did there. Donald Trump won that county by 10,000. So just that county alone, in theory, you could see the Republicans wipe out the lead enjoyed right now by the Democrats there. Let's go back to the Senate, back to Nevada. And you can just, I can poke around and show you the other counties here. Leon County right here. Again, 0% reported 2 years ago. The margin here for Donald Trump was 12,000. So again, just with these counties that haven't reported, you could see that margin made up completely. The most important county in Nevada in terms of margins is Clark County, home to Las Vegas, which makes up almost 75% of the vote. There's 84% reporting right now, which feels like a lot. But our friend Harry Enton just told me that the bulk of the uncounted vote in Clark County is mail vote, which has been heavily Democratic, and they can count until Friday. They only have to mail the ballots by today. Those ballots can actually come in still, and they don't have to be counted till Friday. So it's very possible that Cortez Masto can expand where she is in Clark County, which is hugely important. And again, if you think about the state as a whole, 72% in, 0.6 separating them. I can show you 2 years ago roughly where it is at this time. If you go back, the first votes came in, and you saw Donald Trump way ahead there. But by where we were now, 8 a.m. the next day, it was very close. There was only 0.8% separating them with 85% in. So that margin isn't that different than where we are now, Don.
Yeah. So what's the margin again now? Just because it keeps changing.
The votes in Nevada, I think,
and it's early or late, depending.
Okay, so 72% in, and there's 4,500 votes separating them right now in Nevada.
Wow.
It's close. It's close. Again, we got, this county I showed you before, which hadn't reported at all yet, Nye County, just reported in, 81% in. That just happened as we were speaking. Remember, this was all gray not 2 minutes ago, Don. Now you can see Adam Laxalt, the Republican there, with a 5,000 vote edge with 81% in.
What's that do to the numbers?
Actually, it flipped. He's now ahead. He's ahead. So that put him ahead. So now for the first time, we see Adam Laxalt ahead in Nevada. That's key. 74% in. Adam Laxalt has taken the lead in Nevada. That's all because of this one county, Nye County, that we just told you about there. Again, I warn you, though, that 75% of the vote in the state in general is in Clark County. Yes, they have 84% in, but the bulk of that, we are told, is mail ballot, which skews Democratic, and they can count that for some time. Let me quickly look at Washoe County also. All right, this is also a county which Catherine Cortez Masto is leading by more than a point, only 50% reporting in this county. So a lot more vote to count here. Joe Biden won this county by 4.5 points. So this could be a while.
You've got three counties here that there's no...
now we're down to 2 counties that have no votes. You have Lyon County right now. Again, 0 votes counted 2 years ago, just so you see, in this county, Donald Trump netted 12,000 votes, had a 12,000 vote lead there, so that matters. There's no question that the Republicans will pad their lead there. And the county we also haven't heard from is Douglas County, also a heavily Republican county. 2 years ago, Donald Trump, a 10,000 vote lead there, a 10,000 vote margin. So, yes.
I'm being told to go back to the main board that it's flipped again. So let's
go back to the main board. Let me go back to the U.S. Senate. Let's check it out. I'm still seeing red here. Yeah. I'm still seeing red in Nevada. You can see Adam Laxalt with a lead of about a point. A point right now, 74% in. Maybe we're getting more votes and it could switch back to blue. But I think it could switch a few more times. Yeah. When we start seeing these county votes come in and we get more vote from Washoe County and more vote from Clark County, this is going to be a nail-biter. We're going to be counting ballots in Nevada for some time, Don.
Here, in Nevada and in Georgia and elsewhere.
Yeah. You were talking about Georgia. Again, just so people remember, Georgia, just so people know, we haven't seen new votes reported yet from Georgia. Raphael Warnock with a lead there. But the reason that Don is saying we're counting votes in Georgia for some time is no one's at 50%. If no one gets to 50% plus 1 vote, there will be a runoff on December 6th. It looks like that's where we're headed.
And the outstanding counties, there's, big blue counties, Atlanta, big cities, but there were lots of red dots all across the state. There we go.
There we go. So 96% reporting. Of the 4% remaining, what you see here is the places where there's blue, that's where there's Democratic vote left to be counted. The places where there's red dots, Republican vote, the bigger the dot, the more the vote. You can see there are much bigger blue dots, but there are more red dots here. It probably, at this point, according to the Secretary of State's office, won't give anyone 50%, so this looks like it's headed to a runoff.
Thank you, John Berman. Hey, we still got a long ways to go, Caitlin Collins, and a lot to talk about.
Long ways to go. We are going to be spending many more hours together. Let's talk about Nevada, the race that they were just looking at closely there over on the wall. Obviously, that's a state that President Biden won by just 3 points. Senator Cortez Masto is one of the most endangered incumbent Democrats. She's up against Adam Laxalt, who, of course, signed on to that lawsuit to challenge the 2020 election. He's been an interesting candidate because, remember, of course, he later scrubbed his election, his website of his mentions of Trump, of his mentions about disputing the 2020 election. What are you watching for there, Ron?
Well, I mean, he's been a little bit more of a generic Republican than some of the more controversial Trump candidates who have run into trouble, like in New Hampshire and Pennsylvania and elsewhere. And he's been able to surf what has been a wave of economic discontent. I mean, there's almost no state that got hammered more by the shutdowns in the pandemic or by inflation after. But Nevada is a state where Democrats actually have an operation. I mean, you know, Richard Daley would appreciate what Harry Reid built in Nevada, and they have won a lot of close races. And, you know, the folks there, John Ralston, the guru of the Nevada early vote, you know, he just points out, as Harry and John did, that what's left is going to be largely Clark County mail votes. That benefits Democrats. So no one can predict how this goes, but history would suggest this is a place where Democrats can win close races.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, Democrats were worried about Catherine Cortez Masto because this is her first term. This is her first time running for re-election. Harry Reid isn't around anymore, but certainly his machine is still around. They were worried about the high gas prices out there and also looking at Latino voters to see whether or not this demographic realignment would actually show up, particularly around working class Latinos. We saw it in Florida. We may see a little bit of it in Nevada. Yeah. But listen, those unions that, you know, culinary workers unions that Democrats have been so good at organizing. I think we're going to see that tonight. But listen, Republicans were so bullish on Nevada. I mean, they were bullish on the Senate race. They were bullish on the governor's race, as well as the congressional seats as well. We don't know what's going to happen, but Democrats right now feel better about this race.
Can I just add real quick? I talked this week to the Secretary Treasurer of the Unite here, and she had a great phrase. She said, "We are within the margin of effort in Nevada and Arizona." and Pennsylvania. And that is kind of the mindset that has made that state more competitive for Democrats, and obviously than it was earlier in the century.
Yeah, and obviously that's something the White House is watching incredibly closely. They are celebrating the victories that they've had so far. A surprising night for some of them, Democrats who have been panicking. The House, though, we are still watching so closely of what is going to happen there, what it's going to look like. It's not the night that Kevin McCarthy thought they were going to have. We're all watching New York, I think, really closely. Obviously, the gerrymandering, the redistricting that happened there. You know, we talked to Sean Patrick Maloney's challenger, Mike Lawler, this week. He is a freshman Republican assemblyman. He may potentially beat him. He has put him in this tight race. And that matters. If you're watching at home, Sean Patrick Maloney is the chair for House Democrats, their campaign chair. He's the one responsible for making sure they keep their majority. What do you think that says for the rest of the seats that are up in New York still?
I mean, it's extraordinary, right? I mean, who would have thought that if the Democrats lose the House because of the results in New York State? I mean, there are two ways to look at this. One is that, as you said, Lee Zeldin ran better than expected. Maybe not better than expected in the end, but he ran better than the Republicans have done in recent years, and that helped Republicans win a number of these House races. There's another way to look at it, which is that a Democratic court in New York State threw out a Democratic gerrymander, while a Republican court in Florida upheld an even more severe Ron DeSantis gerrymander. And those two decisions by these two courts may be the margin that flips the House.
No, I think that's right. Democrats obviously pulling their hair out. The idea that Sean Patrick Maloney might go down. You heard Kevin McCarthy mention this in his speech because this would be a big get. Listen, Democrats sort of shot themselves in the foot with that original redistricting map. And we see now that these...
essentially because they overreached.
Exactly. It went to the court, and now these districts are much more sort of balanced. And that's why we see these fights.
But it is fair to say that Florida, he overreached even more, and it went to the court, and the court said fine.
Yeah.
There was the New York State court. Maybe they made the right decision reading the state constitution, but that could ultimately be the little, the last nail that switches the House.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see also what the postmortem on that essentially is, the argument there. Even though Democrats are having a better night than they expected, Republicans certainly aren't. We're still expecting a major number of votes in the key Senate race of Arizona. That is something that everyone is watching closely, from Washington to the White House to here at CNN. Stay with us. We will be right back to keep you updated on what's happening.
It is the top of the hour, everyone. I'm Don Lemon. This is CNN's continuing coverage of election night in America. At this hour, control of Congress still at stake, and the balance of power in the House has been decided. Many of the races really just too close to call. But now I want to take a look at where we are as it concerns the balance of power in the House. First of the House, the party with the at least 218 seats. That will be the majority in the House. Republicans leading with about 195 seats at this hour. They need to win 19 competitive seats to gain control. Democrats have 176 at this point. Let's check the Senate now, the balance of power there. The chamber still hangs in the balance. Republicans still hoping to gain control of the Senate. And at this moment, all eyes are on 4 Senate races: Wisconsin, Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona. There are still no projections in those races. In Nevada, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat, leading at this hour. In Wisconsin, Democrat Mandela Barnes trails Republican Senator Ron Johnson. And in Arizona, where incumbent Mark Kelly is facing Blake Masters, right now they're separated by, get this, about 140,000 votes. Let's head to Georgia now. That's where Republican Herschel Walker and incumbent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, they are very, very, very close. I understand we got some new votes in. We'll head to John Berman in just a bit. If no candidate gets to 50% of the vote, that race could go to a runoff to Secretary of State. They're already predicting that. In Pennsylvania, a huge night for Democrat John Fetterman. CNN is projecting that he has defeated Mehmet Oz, the famous TV doctor. This is after Fetterman had a stroke on the campaign trail, recovered, and then, of course, an endorsement from Oprah Winfrey.
Every county, every vote. Every county, every vote. And that's exactly what happened. We jammed them up. We held the line. I never expected that we were going to turn these red counties blue, but we did what we needed to do, and we had that conversation across every one of those counties. And tonight, that's why I'll be the next U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania.
John Fetterman there in his victory speech. Standing by, Mr. John Berman monitoring the outstanding vote counts at the Magic Wall. Victor Blackwell is reporting on technical and legal challenges involving ballots all across the country. Our Harry Enton is digging through the exit poll data in battleground states. And our very own Caitlin Collins with Ron Brownstein and Nia Malika Henderson with the major takeaways tonight. Poppy Harlow, along with her political team of experts and commentators, will join us as well. And of course, our reporters are standing by live, coast to coast, covering every single angle. Let's walk over now. Very important man of the hour. That is Mr. John Berman, where he's going to take us behind the scenes of all of this. John, where do you want to start?
All right, Arizona just got a bunch of new votes counted in Arizona, and you can see Mark Kelly's lead there is shrinking. He's now ahead by about 118,000 votes. An hour ago, it was more than 200,000 votes. That's just the way it goes. They're counting more ballots, maybe more Election Day ballots there in Maricopa County, which is where Phoenix is. This is a county that Joe Biden carried by 2 points. You can now see Mark Kelly leads by about nearly 8 points there. So still outperforming Joe Biden, but the margin getting smaller and smaller. Pima County, which is Tucson, Mark Kelly, again, way up there. He's up by 33 points. We just saw a bunch of new votes counted there. This was a county that went to Joe Biden by 18 points. And again, we saw Mojave County here. This is a Republican county, a vastly Republican county, a county that Donald Trump won by 51. Now Blake Masters leads there by about 30,000 votes. The margin much tighter in the Senate race. Let me just give you the governor's race here. You can see Katie Hobbs with 51%, Kari Lake at 48%. Kari Lake.
That is shrinking too, right?
It is, well, that margin is shrinking, but Kari Lake is outperforming Blake Masters by about 3 points. You can see he's at 45.4. Kari Lake is at 48.7. Again, that could be the difference between winning and losing, that 3 points there. Again, I did this before, and I want to take you back to give you a sense of where we are in the process of counting votes as this lead shrinks for the Democrats. Mark Kelly with a lead of 118,000 votes with 66% in. Let's go back to the presidential race 2 years ago, and I can give you the clock there. At 5 a.m., what time is it now? It's 4 a.m. At 5 a.m., they had 82% in. They had more of the vote counted at this point, but Joe Biden led, let's do D plus 5, right? Is my math there right? D plus 5 for Joe Biden with 82% in. And let's go back to where we are now. So Joe Biden was D plus 5. There was more vote counted, but Mark Kelly is plus 7 right now. So again, we'll see where we are with more of the vote counted. If he can stay at D plus 5 or higher, he should feel good. D
plus 5 or D plus 4?
It was D plus 5 based on my math there. I asked you to fact check me at the time, Don.
We're not going back.
We're not going back. D plus 5. Mark Kelly, where he wants to be, we think right now, but let's wait to see as more of this is counted. Still could go either way. A lot else to show you nearby in Nevada right now. Just 615 votes separate Adam Laxalt and Catherine Cortez Masto. We have a couple counties which skew Republican. These are heavily Republican counties. Donald Trump won these by 10,000 votes each, where we have 0 vote in. So again, the Republican Adam Laxalt will pick up votes there, but Clark County, which makes up almost 75% of the vote remaining, yes, there's 84% in. The vote remaining is largely mail vote, which they can count until Saturday, and that skews heavily Democratic. So we may not know in Nevada for some time. We did get some new votes counted in Georgia. Remember, Don, what was the margin last time we spoke between these two men? It was 11,000 votes. Now, Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democrat, leads by 18,000 votes, but he's grown his lead. He's grown his lead. He now leads by 0.5%, but the issue is he's only at 49.2. The magic number in Georgia is 50 plus 1. 50%. Plus 1 vote. If Raphael Warnock doesn't get there, there will be a runoff on December 6th. And the way things are going right now, if the way things are going, that could be decisive. If Adam Laxalt was able to hang on in Arizona. Ron Johnson, we haven't called Wisconsin yet or projected Wisconsin yet, but he's been ahead by more than a point for some time now. If Ron Johnson wins in Wisconsin and if Mark Kelly hangs on as the Democrat in Arizona, then control of the U.S. Senate will go down to the runoff in Georgia on December 6th.
You can see the Warnock folks are pushing the car.
They're trying. It's a long way to go. It's 0.8%. That's actually a fairly substantial margin at this point with not much vote left. I can show you where that vote is if you want to see. Again, the bigger the dot, the more the vote. So there are some votes still in Democratic areas there, but that would be an awfully big margin to make up with not too many votes left on.
All right. Thank you very much, John Berman. Let's head over now to Victor Blackwell, who's at the voting desk. And I understand you have give us some context on what's going on in Nevada with the vote count there, Victor.
Yeah, let's start there because the question is, where are the votes? When will we get the results? And let's take a tour here, starting in Nevada. Of course, we have covered over the last several weeks the concerns over drop boxes and security around those. Well, we know that the drop boxes will not be counted. We're now past Election Day. We're into the following morning. They could take until Thursday to count. And where are they? Of course, in the most populous counties. You've got down here Clark County, where we've got Las Vegas, the most populous county in the state, and then up here in Washoe County, where Reno is, and then much smaller Douglas County. Again, there is no way to know how many ballots have been dropped into those boxes, but those will be counted over the next several days. And while we're here, let's take a tour through. Wisconsin, we're told that there are fewer than 12,000 votes to count in the Milwaukee County. That does not mean that there are 12,000 votes left to report. These votes that will be counted will come out with the next tranche of reported votes there, but 12,000 there in Milwaukee County. In Arizona, the estimate there in Maricopa County, the most populous county there with the biggest tranche of voters across the state, it'll take until Friday to count all those ballots. Of course, at the top of this hour, getting those new results, as John reported from Arizona, and the very tight governors and Senate races there. And in Georgia, where the prediction from Gabe Sterling with the Secretary of State's office, that's a prediction from the state, not a projection from CNN, is that race between Warnock and Walker will go to that December 6th runoff. What we're learning from Columbia County, a big amount of votes still out there is all the early votes. From Columbia, it's about 33,500. But as we saw from the map that John just showed us, still so many votes out in the Atlanta metro area that we are waiting for. So that's where we're getting the latest of where the votes are, the count, and when we should expect those results.
All right, Victor Blackwell will check back. John Berman, since he invoked your name, let's talk about what's
That's right. He said my name. I get to talk now. Again, Raphael Warnock with a lead of about 0.5%. Let's see where Raphael Warnock is outperforming what Joe Biden did 2 years ago. Remember, Joe Biden won by 11,000 votes. It was very, very close. We can compare how the two are doing. Well, okay. So Raphael Warnock is outperforming him basically where Democrats need to outperform, need to do well in the Atlanta metro area and all those counties. Warnock in Fulton County is at 73% of the vote. He's leading by 51%. Joe Biden won that district by 46%. In Cobb County, Raphael Warnock leads by 16%. Joe Biden won that district by that county by 14%. So Raphael Warnock, that's where he seems to be doing well. I can also, I can show you exactly where the vote is at this point too. 96% reporting. Let's take it down here to about 95. Okay, so, well, I can take it down low. Let's go to 90.
You love this, don't you?
I do. It's fun. So here, these are the counties that don't have 89% of the vote counted yet. You can see there aren't many. Most of the state has already counted at least 89% of the vote. These are the counties that have got less than that. You can see, for instance, right here is Clayton County, which is a heavily Democratic county. They're at 87%. Raphael Warnock, you would imagine, would expand his lead some there. Then the rest of the counties, it gets pretty small. Right, I like Sumter County. Why? Hometown of Jimmy Carter. Plains, Georgia is here. Raphael Warnock's got a very small lead there of about 5 points. That's what Joe Biden did. That's at 87%. So some of these counties down here, Raphael Warnock could grow a little bit. Dougherty County right there, he's got an 11,000 vote lead, just 81% in, and he's outperforming what Joe Biden was there. There are some Republican counties still here, but fairly small. Eccles County, you can see the votes here are in the hundreds, right? there's still vote to be counted there, but not much room for Herschel Walker to expand. But we talk about this, and the important thing I think to remember, again, Raphael Warnock can be ahead of Herschel Walker by any amount, but if he's not at 50%, it's still going to a runoff on December 6th.
Yeah, and the Secretary of State there, Gabriel Sterling, saying this is probably going to go to a runoff. We've been saying we're not going to know for hours. We're not going to know for days. We may not know for weeks here.
We may not know until December 6th, and the reason for that is because Georgia could be decisive. This is where first of all, this is what we've called at this point. There are still 4 outstanding races. Georgia, which could go to December 6th. Wisconsin, we haven't called that yet. Nevada, the margin in Nevada is just 615 votes. And Arizona, which right now Mark Kelly is leading by 118,000 votes. If it ended right now, if everything ended right now, it would be 50-50. Take that off the stand, it would be 49 for Democrats. They would need to win that in a runoff to maintain control of the U.S. Senate. Ron Johnson leading right now in Wisconsin. These 2 seats, we still have a lot of vote to count there, so we're not going to know, Don, for some time.
I think that the magic wall is a little warm. We're going to give it a break. It needs a little break. We're going to take
Rest
a break.
magic. Sleep soundly magic.
So stand by, John. Stand by, everyone. We have more projections in the House. In the governor's races, as both chambers of Congress remain up for grabs at this hour. This is CNN's special live coverage of election night, Morning in America. Don Lemon, election night in America continuing. We have a key race alert: Nevada Senate, the Arizona Senate, Georgia Senate, Wisconsin Senate. That is the balance of power, and that is our key race alert. We're checking out all of these things. If you look at Nevada, Adam Laxalt has pulled ahead of Catherine Cortez Masto, the incumbent there. She had been leading all night, but as of now, he has pulled ahead. Let's check now another race here. Let's go to Arizona. Arizona. Mark Kelly, the incumbent, 52.4% to Blake Masters, the Republican there who's trying to win from the incumbent, 45.4%. But here's the interesting part. That has shrunk just over the last couple of minutes. We're going to head to Georgia now. Let's go to Georgia. Everyone is watching that race in Georgia. This is where incumbent Raphael Warnock has 49.2% of the vote, and Herschel Walker has 48.7% of the vote. Raphael Warnock is leading, but if no one gets to 50% plus 1, then we're told there's going to be a runoff. CNN has not projected that, but the Secretary of State in Georgia is saying it is likely. Wisconsin right now. We head to Wisconsin, where Ron Johnson, who's the incumbent, is 50.5% of the vote. Mandela Barnes, 49.3% of the vote. 94% of the estimated vote in right now. That could shrink a little bit, but we have to see where the outstanding votes are. So why don't we head over to John Berman. John, can we start here in Wisconsin?
Did I hear you ask where the outstanding vote is?
You did.
Milwaukee. We have about 82% reporting there, which leaves some votes still to be counted. You can see Mandela Barnes has got a big lead of 41%, which is outperforming Joe Biden, who won that by about 40%. You know, the issue for Mandela Barnes is that Ron Johnson leads by 32,000 votes. Is there enough vote left in the Democratic counties, which would include Milwaukee, also Dane County, 93% in? Mandela Barnes is a huge lead there, a little bit of vote left. But 32,000 is a fair amount. I can see here where there's, you know, let me take it down to 95. This is where, the counties here that have color on them are counties that still have, 6% of their vote to count. So not much, but some. Is it enough to make up 32,000? Hard to tell. You'd rather be Ron Johnson right now with this lead of 1.2% than Mandela Barnes. We just got some new votes, Don, in Nevada.
Okay.
Votes counted in Nevada. Remember, last time we met here, Adam Laxalt was leading by 615 votes. Now that lead is up to 14,000. Where did it come from?
Right, that county.
Douglas County, which had no votes counted before. Now we have 75% reporting, and he has a 7,500 vote lead there and a lead of about 34%. Which is outperforming Donald Trump. Donald Trump won this district by 24%, so Adam Laxalt doing what he needs to do in the Republican areas. The key, am I seeing this right? Washoe County? Washoe County, okay, this is also very interesting here. Adam Laxalt now leads in Washoe County. He's up by almost 4% there, was 64% in. Why is this important? Because this is the second most populous county in the state. It makes up about 15%, and it's kind of a swing county. This is a county that Democrats won. Joe Biden won, but he won by 4% or so. So if Adam Laxalt were to win this county, that would bode well for him. My suspicion is that a lot of the remaining vote to be counted there is still mail vote, which does skew Democratic, and they can count that mail vote until Saturday. So there might be ground for Masto to make up some of that vote. And also in Clark County, which right now is the only county. Notice, by the way, you look at the map and you see this, you say, hey, you know, Catherine Cortez Masto is only ahead in one county. How could she possibly win the state? Well,
votes there.
It's almost 75% of the vote in the state, 84% in. She's got a lead of almost 5 points. The remaining vote is all mail vote there, which again skews Democratic. And they can count that vote. The mail-in vote. The mail-in vote skews Democratic, and they can count that until Saturday. You can see the margins here. Right now, she's up by about 5 points. Overall, remember, the statewide lead for Adam Laxalt is 14,000. Could she make up 14,000 votes in Clark County? We'll see, Don, over the next several days.
This is why we caution people, I mean, look, even before, that this could take some time. And here we are, and this is close.
Very
so lots of votes to be counted. Thank you very much, Mr. John Berman. And that gives us lots to talk about, Caitlin Collins.
Yeah, and speaking of taking time, in Wisconsin, they did not start processing those mail ballots until Election Day. And now we are watching this fascinating race with Ron Johnson and Mandela Barnes. Ron Johnson had initially said he was only going to serve 2 terms. And then in this race, he said, you know, given the political landscape, he was backing off of that pledge. And now he is locked in this race with Mandela Barnes. What do you make of it, Nia?
Yeah, listen, I think it's much closer than any Democrat thought it would be, any Republican thought it would be. Sort of going into this, it was thought that Ron Johnson was a vulnerable incumbent Republican. But Democrats didn't necessarily think that Mandela Barnes was the person to challenge him. And you saw Republicans really attack Mandela Barnes as a progressive. They dumped a lot of ads on him, linking him to crime and, you know, that he wanted to defund the police. And listen, you had Democrats really rush in. Biden campaigned there, as did Barack Obama as well. And so it's a tight race. We don't know what's going to happen.
But Barnes kept his distance from Biden noticeably in those events.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And that worked to a certain extent. We don't know what's going to happen in this race. But I think it just goes to show that Democrats overall tonight overperforming what their expectations were and able to put this coalition together that defeated Donald Trump and a lot of Donald Trump candidates.
And that's really the story, right? I mean, Wisconsin, I think, embodies 2 things that we saw tonight. One is that while there was definitely some fraying at the edges in the anti-Trump coalition that turned out in 18 and 20, which you would expect with 9% inflation and a first midterm for an incumbent president with an approval rating of 44%, by and large, that coalition held together more than people thought. I mean, Mandela Barnes won women. He won college-educated white voters. He won about 90% of black voters. And he won young voters, you know, preponderantly. That was the coalition that came together against Trump and Trump Republicans in 18 and 20, and it largely held to a greater extent. Now, you know, again, the fraying at the edges may be enough to tip the House and Senate narrowly, but that's the reason why this idea of a red wave was always, I think, somewhat overblown. And the other thing is, you know, people talked about like a Dobbs mirage or that abortion was fading as an issue. He won 71%. Barnes won 71% of the voters, of the majority of voters in Wisconsin who said abortion should be legal all or most of the time. Gretchen Whitmer won 80% of voters who said abortion should be legal most of the time, even though only 25% of people in Michigan, right next door, said the economy was strong. So, you know, the idea that, you know, that abortion, I think, reinforced the concerns that this anti-Trump coalition had about where the Republican Party is going in this era, and it allowed Democrats to basically avoid the worst.
No, and I think all of that money they spent on those ads around abortion was really an argument about the Republican Party being extreme, right? And so it really ginned up support among that Biden coalition, the sort of anti-Trump coalition. There was all of this sort of of second guessing. Maybe they're spending too much time and money and ads on abortion, but it worked in a lot of these states where it was really able to, I think, remind voters of what they didn't like about the Republican Party.
Especially with Michigan, they had that measure actually on the ballot about abortion, which was something
more powerful there than anywhere.
Tudor Dixon really struggled to push back on that, saying you can vote for this without voting for, you can vote for Whitmer's position without voting for her. Clearly, that did not
the exit poll. We'll see if the exit poll is right. The exit poll had Whitmer winning 66% of college-educated white women and 96% of black women. Not a typo, as far as I know.
Right.
96%. I mean, the gender gap was real in this election, both nationally and especially in these key states. Although I have to say that Johnson toughing it out is a reminder of just how tough Wisconsin is for Democrats in this era when Republicans are running so well among rural white and non-college white voters.
And just talking about how expectations were wrong, I mean, I talked to Democrats today who thought maybe Whitmer herself was in trouble. But, of course, we were watching to see what happens in Wisconsin, Nevada as well. We've been focused on the Senate. It's not just the only big story tonight, though. The House has not been decided yet, despite what you heard from Kevin McCarthy earlier, projecting and predicting that they are going to have a majority by the time everyone wakes up tomorrow. We are getting new projections, so stand by and we'll bring you the latest.
Okay, so this is a CNN projection. CNN can project that 5 additional House races here. 5 additional House races. First, we're going to go to Iowa. That will be a Republican hole there. That is where Marionette Miller Meeks will win over the Democrat Christina Bohannon. And then in Wisconsin 3, we have a Republican pickup with Derek Van Orden beating out Democrat Brad Pfaff. In New York's House race 2, we have a GOP hold with Republican Andrew Garbarino defeating Jackie Gordon. And New Hampshire 1, we have a Democratic hold there. Incumbent Chris Pappas winning over Caroline Leavitt. Also in New Hampshire, the Democrat there, Ann Custer in District 2, holds that seat against Republican Robert Burns. Robert Burns there. Pappas will hold on. Okay, so listen, let's talk about the balance of power. Okay, Republicans are getting closer, but they are still short of 218. That is the magic number. Let's go to the magic wall now and Mr. John Berman to see where everything is landing now.
So the number you're looking at right here, don't be alarmed. The 221 number for Republicans is where they're ahead right now. 214 is where Democrats are ahead. This would give Republicans control of the U.S. House, but not in the numbers they were hoping for. This would be at the low end of the gain that they were hoping for. I can take a look at the competitive seats. The competitive seats there, you can see Democrats leading in 47 of the competitive seats, Republicans leading in 35. I will remind you, however, that Republicans only need to win 30 of the competitive seats to take control. Right now, they lead in 35. So they're doing what they need to do to take control of the U.S. House. There are some interesting stories as we go around the country. I think one of the most interesting stories, and Democrats will be kicking themselves over this for some time to come, is in New York. You can see 10 competitive seats here in New York. Republicans lead in 8, or we've called the races for them in 8. Democrats lead in 2. Those boundaries 2 years ago would have given Democrats an 8-2 lead in these seats. So Republicans have completely flipped in these competitive seats, and that includes, for now, we have not called this race or projected this race, Sean Patrick Maloney, the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, is trailing Mike Lawler in New York's 17th District. Republicans would love to knock off Maloney just for the bragging rights to knock off the DCCC chair. He is trailing 98% in. There's still some vote to be counted there, but he's got to make up 3,000 votes.
And listen, he's going to get it from his own party. There are lots of consternation about funding election deniers.
Well, however, if you want to talk about that, look, Sean Patrick Maloney, he's going to take the blame for the bad redistricting for Democrats in New York. Funding election deniers, let's talk about that, because the most prominent race that happened in was in Michigan's 3rd congressional district, where indirectly Democrats backed election denier John Gibbs right now in the primary. And Peter Meijer, who was a Republican incumbent who voted to impeach Donald Trump, he lost in the primary, and Democrats may have helped get that defeat in the primary. John Gibbs won, but right now the Democrat is leading there. So it may have worked, right? That funding may have worked for the Democrats there. They may get a pickup, what is amounted to a pickup in that district. While we're talking about Michigan, let's also talk about Elise Loughlin. You know, we've called this race, I believe we've called this race 99% in. This is a seat Democrats desperately wanted to keep, and they have. We've called this race. She's got nearly 51% of vote. Liz Cheney, Republican Liz Cheney, went out in campaign for Elissa Slotkin there. A couple other places that we're watching that I do think worth noting right now. In Wisconsin, this district, which we just called for Derek Van Orden over Brad Pfaff, what makes this interesting, and this was a district that is now R+, it's a Republican district by almost 5 points. Democrats had held most of this seat before redistricting. This was the one rural Wisconsin seat that Democrats still held. Democrats are losing control more and more of these rural districts that they had held historically. There just aren't that many left on.
All right. Thank you, John Berman. We'll check back with you. I want to get now to Victor Blackwell, who's at the voting desk. And I understand you have some news out of Arizona, Victor.
Yeah, Don, specifically out of Maricopa County. Of course, 61% or so of the state's population, the largest tranche of voters. We've just learned from the elections office there that they are done reporting until later tonight. Now, the 223 voting sites, they say they have all reported. Now they're moving on to the early ballots. They say that overnight, this is a tweet from their office, that overnight they're now preparing the tens of thousands of early ballots dropped off today for signature verification in the morning, and they will post more results Wednesday night. It's Wednesday across the whole country now. So Wednesday night, yes. We went from early morning into the evening. Yeah, so later tonight.
You're looking at me. I don't know.
So that's going to happen later tonight. Now, we know also that the office says that it will take until Friday to report everything. But the signature verification, what does that look like? Well, they have to scan all of the signatures from these tens of thousands of ballots, prepare them. It's called staging for verification throughout the day, and then we expect a large tranche of those early votes to be reported. Now, it's interesting that they say at this hour the 223 voting sites, they've all reported because there was that technical issue. They promised that there would not be a problem with getting those votes in, and those votes have come in, been reported there. So all of those votes in, 90% across the state, waiting for these early ballots, of course, in all-important Maricopa County, Don.
Hey, Victor, John and I have a lot of folks talking to us. You know, he's here working the magic wall, and I'm trying to keep the, the trains running on time. Give us the headline of what you were saying.
All the Election Day Maricopa County vote has now been processed?
Yeah, so that's what they say. That's all been reported. The tweet, again, from the office, they say that Election Day ballots from all 223 sites have been reported. They've now moved on to the early votes ballots, trying to verify the signatures there. So,
all right, that's interesting. Okay,
yeah.
So let's look at Maricopa County, which makes up 60% of the vote in Arizona. Let me backtrack here, just so people can see where we are in Arizona in general. You have Mark Kelly with a lead of about 6.5 points in this state, with 66% reported right now. Victor was just talking about Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix. His lead there is almost at 8%. Joe Biden won this district by 2. What Victor just reported is that all the Election Day in-person voting now has been counted. What do we know about that vote nationally at this point? That skews Republican.
Right.
So in Maricopa County, theoretically, their best votes for the Republicans have now been processed, and Mark Kelly still holds a lead there. What's a little quirky in Arizona is that they have a very robust mail-in ballot process, and you can drop off your mail ballots through Election Day. So you can walk them in rather than pull a vote in person. That counts as a mail ballot. Sometimes in Arizona, what happens is the people who put in their mail ballots later also tilt a little bit Republican. So it's hard to tell exactly how Democratic the remaining mail vote will be. We do know that the mail vote tends to skew Democratic. So that might be good news for Mark Kelly, but that is interesting.
What would that portend for the governor's race there?
Let me just look at what the governor's race is. So the Senate race right now, you can see a lead of 6.5%. In the governor's race, that margin is much tighter. It's about 2.2%. So Katie Hobbs is underperforming Mark Kelly. Kari Lake is overperforming Blake Masters there by about, so Blake Masters at 45.6%.
She's at 48.
She's at 48. So it's a 3-point difference. And I can't stress this enough. 3%
Make a huge difference.
That's the ball. Could very well be the ball game in Arizona. You could see a split ticket there. We'll see as more of the vote is counted. 66% in. I think we also got some new votes counted in Nevada. Also, okay, there are no counties left that have not reported anything. So I believe the votes we just got in is Lyon County, which is the biggest of the rural counties. It's the third largest county, third most populous county in Nevada, but it only makes up 1.8% of the vote. You can see now 71% in. Adam Laxalt has got an edge there of 8,000 votes. The overall statewide vote for him is now 22,000. We know we have a lot of mail vote left to count in Clark County. Can Catherine Cortez Masto make up that margin in Clark County? It is going to be a nail biter, and they can count that mail ballot until Saturday.
All right. Thank you very much, John Berman. We want to go to Nevada now. There are 4 key Senate races remain undecided at this hour. Control of Congress up for grabs right now. We'll get to Nevada when we come back. Did you hear those cheers? That was for John Fetterman when CNN declared John Fetterman to be the projected winner in Pennsylvania earlier. I want to get now to CNN's Harry Ensign. He's at our battleground desk for us. He's going to talk to us more about with John Fetterman, how he won Pennsylvania. Listen, a lot of people counted him out after that debate, but didn't seem to affect him. He won.
No, it didn't seem to affect him. He did seem to win. You know, look, when we think about Pennsylvania, right, we think of the Great Lake battlegrounds. We think of white voters without a college degree. And when we look at the voters who make up the plurality of all voters in the state of Pennsylvania, it is, in fact, those white voters without a college degree. They make up 47% of all the voters in Pennsylvania. So there was this big question, could John Fetterman perhaps win back some of those white non-college educated voters? So let's take a look at how they voted in this election. And what you see is, you see that Mehmet Oz did, in fact, win among white voters without a college degree. But it was just a 24-point margin. And although we can't put it up on the screen, I can tell you that back in 2020, in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump carried white voters without a college degree by over 30 points. So John Fetterman's idea that I can go and at least shrink the margins that Trump has among white voters without a college degree seemed to work out. Now, of course, there was also the question that both Mehmet Oz and John Fetterman had weaknesses in the electorate, right? The idea essentially that Oz's weakness was that he, in fact, was from out of state. He was a carpetbagger. So we asked in our exit poll the question, has Oz lived in the state long enough to represent it effectively? And the vast majority or clear majority of voters said no, 56%. So that clearly cost Oz. Now, Fetterman, of course, also had something that a lot of voters worried about, and that was his health. Could he actually serve effectively because of his stroke? And what we found in our exit poll was that 50%, the plurality, said that, yes, he could serve effectively. So Mehmet Oz's weakness clearly hurt him, cost him the race, and John Fetterman's weakness, in fact, it turned out, was not something that cost him the race, as he clearly won this evening. John?
Right. Harry Ensign, appreciate that. I'm going to toss it over now to Poppy Harlow, my colleague. Poppy, I've been saying all along after that debate that I thought people would be more empathetic when it came to John Fetterman, and that the media and the pundits were actually being harder on him than the voters. And it turns out that may have been true.
I mean, I think you were right on that, Don. I mean, you also said, wait, listen to the voters, right? And so let's talk to our experts about this. Paul and Maria, let me start with you, Maria. I'll get to you, Paul. I just want to talk about what Fetterman tells us. What do you think he tells us about the party, or does he not? Because voters in Pennsylvania weren't enamored with Trump or Biden, according to our exit poll, but they got behind Fetterman. Why?
I think there's a couple of reasons. Fetterman won against all odds. But I think it's 4 in the morning. But I think it does tell us a couple of things. He actually, and I know that there was a narrative that Democratic candidates did not focus on the economy. Fetterman did. He talked about minimum wage. For working class voters, that's huge. He talked to the unions. That's huge in Pennsylvania. Working class, right? Harry talked about this, and everyone has talked about this, how he has been able to make that up for white working class voters, which is a huge part of the Democratic coalition has been historically, Trump won them, but for us, John Fetterman got them back. The other thing that I'm hearing, and I'm really focusing on and tracking the Latino vote, yes. Fetterman came out in support of so many of these policies that Latinos support. Latinos gave him 3-1 and gave him a big majority. And what interestingly Fetterman did during the campaign was that he focused a lot on his wife's immigrant story. And that really, I think, helped him out.
Point. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, well, Maria's right to raise Giselle Barreto, the wife of John Fetterman. She saved his life. She may have saved his campaign.
He said that tonight.
God bless her.
He said that on stage tonight.
She saved the campaign, then. She stepped in
right.
when Lieutenant Governor Fetterman was unable to campaign. I get 3 lessons that all Democrats need to learn from Fetterman. First, it's the working class, stupid.
That's right.
Just what Maria said. Harry showed us the data. You know, the Democratic Party, I've been saying this for over a decade, we're moving away. We used to be the party of the factory floor. Now we're the party of the faculty lounge. Well, John Fetterman is a factory floor Democrat, and he showed, number 2, margins matter. He campaigned in rural Pennsylvania, cut the margin. And number 3, authenticity is everything. He's real. And a lot of people thought Dr. Oz was a fake and a phony.
So, Mia, you've been talking a lot about, beyond who won tonight, what it means for committees and power.
Right. So as we're thinking about who is going to be speaker, who is going to be minority leader, it's really about who's going to chair these important committees where the work gets done.
Set the agenda.
Right. Who sets the agenda? It's the difference between Representative Maxine Waters in Financial Services being the chair versus Representative Patrick McHenry. So these are, I mean, this is where the work gets done before the votes get out, before you get the policy on the floor for a vote. It's really important. And so Kevin McCarthy right now is thinking about all of these things. He's thinking about all of this.
Are you excited about Marjorie Taylor Greene taking the committee
Well,
spot?
right. I mean,
that's what
she wants
Kevin
oversight.
McCarthy said.
And she wants oversight. Let's talk about Georgia.
Right.
Okay, so it's your state, and we don't know what's going to happen to Georgia. It's looking more and more likely like it could go to a runoff.
Right.
Talk about that, because it's unique to Georgia, and what you think the independent, in that libertarian candidate rather, Chase Oliver, who got a little over 2% of the vote. What does that mean in a runoff? Where did those votes go?
First off, it means all eyes are back on Georgia yet again. And what our current numbers show right now, Walker is at 48.7, Warnock at 49.2. So no one's reached a 50%, so more than likely we'll go to a runoff. Looking at the history, being from Georgia, my old college professor, Charles Bullock, writes a lot about this. This goes back to the 1960s, around the civil rights era. A segregationist representative from Macon was frustrated with the fact that African Americans voted in blocks and the white vote was watered down and went across the spectrum. So he came up with a law that said you have to get 50% or we go to a runoff. Fast forward to today, where we have 2 African Americans that potentially could go to a runoff vote. And enter Chase Oliver, libertarian candidate who presented himself as the Goldilocks candidate. I'm not too red, I'm not too blue. But what it looks as though, and looking at exit polls from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a lot of his voters more than likely may go to Warnock because they went to him because they were frustrated with Walker. They did not like Trump, so they went to Warnock. So if we go to a runoff, as much as I hate to say that, this could potentially benefit Warnock.
A while ago, predicting a runoff potentially, Chase Oliver, the libertarian candidate, said, if a runoff occurs, it's a lesson to them. The majority party candidates, the top 2 candidates, haven't been as responsive as they need to be. Watch closely. We'll get back to you guys very soon. Thank you, everyone. Stand by, everyone. The history made by candidates across the nation tonight and early this morning, including the first Gen Z member of Congress and the former Trump White House official who is now a governor. This is CNN's special live coverage. We'll be right back.
Mucinex Night Shift fights your worst nighttime symptoms so you can get to sleep and wake up ready to go. How could you? So rise above the misery. Wake up to a new you. How dare you? Today you're back and ready to go.
This will not stand. Oh. Huh? Oh, God, nuts.
With Mucinex Night Shift, it's not cold and flu season. It's always comeback season.
Let's be real. Your ears are gross. Yeah, you heard me right. And let me guess, you're cleaning them with these. You need to be using Whoosh. Trust me, no one wants to tell you how gross your ears look. The triple stream safely clears dirt and wax buildup, but all you really need to know, it feels incredible. Whoosh by Black Wolf. Get 15% off and free shipping at trywhoosh.com.
Are you ready for a fresh new bath or shower? Well, now is the best time with 50% off installation, free fixtures, and no interest and no payments for 1 year. Hi, I'm Christina, and it's time to flip your old worn-out bath or shower with Jacuzzi Bath Remodel today. Everyone knows the Jacuzzi brand. They're the most trusted name in water for over 60 years. But did you know they can install a gorgeous bath or shower that feels incredible in as little as 1 day? It's no stress and no mess with a lifetime warranty. Now let's talk beauty. You deserve to start and end your day in a beautiful space that feels great and is custom designed just for you. So call or go online now to see the Christina preferred designs like Canyon, Farm, and Urban. Now that's the total bathroom beauty that I love at a price you can afford. And how about safety? Like an ultra low profile, easy entry shower complete with grab bars and a custom design seat. You deserve safety and peace of mind without sacrificing style. Because with all the worries in daily life, taking a shower shouldn't be one of them.
Every time I stepped over my old tub, I worried I might fall. I don't have those fears anymore. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel gave me a gorgeous shower that's safe too.
I've been trying to get him to remodel that bath for years. I called and they did in just 1 day.
And at a price we could afford.
With one call to Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, you can effortlessly transform that old, ugly eyesore into the stunning bath or shower of your dreams that you'll love for years to come.
Call or go online to jacuzzibathremodel.com to get up to 50% off installation, and you may qualify for no interest and no payments for 12 months. Plus, we're including free fixtures. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-993-9542. That's 800-993-9542. Call now.
Meet Clean Boss, the most powerful botanical disinfectant and cleaner in the world. Clean Boss, no harsh chemicals and safe around people and pets. Clean Boss kills COVID-19 virus and 99.9% of viruses, bacteria, fungus, and mold. Clean Boss, replace bleach, cut grease. Clean Boss goes head-to-head with those toxic cleaners.
It really works. It's all botanically based. I love Clean Boss. I'll never use anything else.
Go to shopcleanboss.com and get Clean Boss now.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
We proudly help veterans with mesothelioma. Call for a free book, 1-800-822-0400, or go to Mesobook.com.
A lot of history being made in these midterm elections. Republican Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be the first woman elected governor of Arkansas, winning the office that her father once held for more than a decade. In my home state of Alabama, Republican Katie Britt has become the first elected female senator from the state, winning an open Senate race to succeed her one-time boss, retiring Republican Senator Richard Shelby. 25-year-old Democrat Maxwell Frost will be the first member of Generation Z elected to Congress. He just won Florida's 10th congressional district. Frost will succeed Democrat Val Demings, who vacated that seat to run for Senate unsuccessfully against Marco Rubio. Democrat Wes Moore is going to be Maryland's first black governor and just the third African-American ever elected governor in the United States. Anthony Brown just became the first black person ever elected Attorney General of Maryland. In Massachusetts, Democrat Maura Healey becomes the first out lesbian governor in U.S. history and the first elected female governor in the state. Republican Markwayne Mullin will be the first Native American senator from Oklahoma in almost 100 years, winning a special election to succeed retiring GOP Senator Jim Inhofe. And in Pennsylvania, Democrat Summer Lee will become the state's first black woman elected to Congress, winning the 12th congressional district there. A lot of history being made. The balance of power in Congress, though, is still undecided, even at this hour as we are closing in on 5 a.m. here on the East Coast. We are still watching 4 key Senate races. The votes are still coming in, so stand by and we'll bring you a key update for those races.
Hello and welcome everyone. Top of the hour, I'm Don Lemon. And what an election night. What an election morning in America. CNN special coverage has been following all the historic wins, major upsets, and some races that could take days, if not weeks, to crown a winner. This is the state of play right now, okay? We're going to look at the balance of power in the House. Control of the House is up in the air right now. 218, that is a magic number this morning. That's how many seats both parties are hoping to win. Okay, so let's take a look. Closer look now. Democrats on the defense, 178. Republicans leading with 198. These results not stopping House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy from claiming victory despite many undecided races.
Now let me tell you, you're out late. But when you wake up tomorrow, we will be in the majority and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority. Yeah! The American people are ready for a majority that will offer a new direction, that will put America back on track. Republicans are ready to deliver it.
He may be right, but he's a little bit ahead of himself. Everything is not decided yet. Let's look at the Senate side, though. The chamber still hangs in the balance. Republicans still hoping to gain control at this moment. We're watching 4 key races here: Nevada, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia. And CNN has not made any projections in these states at this hour. And you can see many of them very, very, very close. In Nevada, Republican Adam Laxalt inching ahead here. This race is very close. His opponent, Catherine Cortez Masto, was ahead earlier. In Wisconsin, you see there Ron Johnson, who is the Republican, hanging on to a lead. The Democrat Mandela Barnes trailing 49.3%, 50.5% for Ron Johnson. We have 94% of the vote in right now. Let's head to Arizona. They are reporting their votes reporting the votes in the biggest county, Maricopa County, until later tonight. Okay, so they still have some work to do there, but there's a lot going on. The elections office is moving on to the early ballots there. Victor Blackwell reported that just moments ago here on CNN. As it stands, though, the incumbent Democratic Senator Mark Kelly is in the lead there. We'll keep a close eye on that. 67% of the estimated vote in there. And in Georgia, Republican Herschel Walker and incumbent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, locked in a very tight race there. Could this head to a runoff? The Secretary of State is saying it will. CNN has not projected that. Our coverage has people all over the ground. We're all standing by here. So let's take a look here. We have all of our folks standing by, our reporters, our correspondents, our producers, crews, all in the field. Now to Mr. John Berman. John, there's so much to get to. Did you see all those faces, all those people out there?
There's
a lot of people out there, and they are ready, and John Berman is as well. Where do you want to start?
So right now, if it were to end right now, the Senate would be tied 50-50. However, I want to point out there are 4 races we have not called. Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. This will determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Let me run you through where we are very quickly. In Wisconsin, the incumbent Republican Ron Johnson has a lead of about 1.2%. That has held fairly steady. There are still votes to be counted in Milwaukee, just 82% in. Mandela Barnes has a huge lead there. Will the remaining 18% counted there be enough for him to make up this 32,000 vote margin? It'll be tough. It'll be tough, but let's see what happens there. Now let's head out west. In Arizona, we've just received some new counting there. Mark Kelly, the incumbent Democrat, is ahead by 110,000 votes. His margins are shrinking. He was ahead by more earlier on. We've seen this in Arizona before. As more of the vote gets counted there, the Democratic vote tends to get counted earlier for whatever reason. Republicans close the margin there. Maricopa County, by far the most populous county there, 60% of the vote. He's holding on to nearly an 8-point edge there. Joe Biden won that by 2.2%, so he's outperforming Biden for now. All the election day vote has been counted there, according to our colleague Victor Blackwell. Only mail votes. However, some of the late arriving mail vote in Maricopa County we've seen before can be more Republican, so we'll have to wait and see how to read into that. Let's go next door to Nevada. This is the incumbent Democrat, Catherine Cortez Masto. She trails by 22,000 votes to Adam Laxalt with 80% in. You can see this sea of red everywhere but Clark County where Las Vegas is. Now, there's 84% reporting in Las Vegas. All the remaining vote in Clark County is mail-in vote. Now, in Nevada, we know that the mail-in vote tends to heavily favor the Democrats. Are there enough mail-in votes in Clark County to make up this 22,000 vote difference? Also, let me point out Washoe County, another key swing county. Joe Biden won this by 4.5. Right now, Adam Laxalt is leading in this swing county. If a Republican wins there, usually you will see them win in the state. We'll watch this closely, just 64% in, a lot of mail to count there.
That flipped since we've been on the air.
Yes, Washoe had been leaning toward Catherine Cortez Masto. Now Adam Laxalt is in the lead, just 64% in. And again, I suspect there's a lot of mail vote to count there as well.
Well, I just meant overall it changed because she was leading in the state.
Yes, she was leading much of the night. Now he is. Let's go to Georgia. Yeah. This right now, Raphael Warnock is in the lead, but the key here is he's at 49.2. The number is 50%. If no one gets to 50%, plus one vote, there will be a runoff on December 6th. Why does that matter, Don? I'm going to switch screens here to show you why that matters, because I think it's so interesting. Let's go to battle for control of the U.S. Senate. These are the 4 seats that we have not projected yet. You can see 48-48. Republicans need 51 to control the U.S. Senate, to take control. Democrats just need 50 because Kamala Harris, the vice president, would break a tie. Let's allocate these races right now. Ron Johnson, if he maintains his lead in Wisconsin, that would give Republicans 49. If Adam Laxalt were to prevail in Nevada, that would give Republicans 50. They're close, but Mark Kelly leads in Arizona, Democrats at 49. And then what are you left with? You're left with the runoff in Georgia. So you won't know who controls the U.S. Senate until the runoff on December 6th. Now, if for some reason Catherine Cortez Masto, the incumbent in Nevada, can retake the lead there, and it's not impossible. There's a lot of mail to be counted in Clark County. It's possible. Then Democrats would already have what they need, and the runoff in Georgia would not determine the outcome of who controls the Senate.
Can we leave it here at Nevada? And there's a reason.
Go back to Nevada?
Let's go back to Nevada, and there's a reason for that, because both of us are going to be interested in this, and you're going to be interested as well, because I just want to turn real quickly and bring in Tabitha Mueller, a political reporter with the Nevada Independent. And John, you can talk to her as well. Thank you so much for joining us as we're looking at what's happening here, and I'm sure, and as you're hearing what we're reporting, is there anything that stands out to you, Tabitha? What can you tell us?
I think it's really important to note that we still have tens of thousands of ballots left to count here in the Silver State, right? Officials in Washoe and Clark County, which are the 2 most populous counties here, said they wouldn't be counting mail-in or drop-off ballots last night. So those are still waiting. And as you noted earlier, mail-in ballots typically do favor Democrats. However, there was a big push for Laxalt, especially in the rural areas. He swept through those so far.
Yeah, we can see, I can actually point out here, you know, Lyon County here. Is it Lyon or Leon? Or Leon County?
Lyon.
Well, okay, Lyon County is the 3rd largest county, 3rd most populous county in all of Nevada. It's only 1.8% of the overall vote, but you can see Adam Laxalt leads there by 51%, an 8,000 vote margin, and there is more vote to count there. You go nearby to Douglas County, it's a similar story. He leads by 35%, about 8,000 votes there. So running up the margin in the rural counties is, and it does look like, Tabitha, there is still more rural vote to count as well?
Yes, yeah. So all of the numbers that have been reported are what they are for right now, but we're expecting another dump of ballots and kind of tallies later on Wednesday, probably sometime in the afternoon. And those might give us a better indication, and people might be able to make some race calls at that point in time. But we are still kind of waiting for that to happen.
Is there enough, do you think, Tabitha, to make up the difference? Because you talk about Clark County. I mean, that is the most populous part.
75%
of the vote.
I was actually just looking at the numbers, and I think there is enough to make a difference, right? It's going to all come down. And here's the thing. We don't know how many mail-in ballots are out there, right? That's something that we're just going to have to wait, because some people put them in the mail, some people dropped them off. And so I think there is enough, depending on how many are out there. But I mean, John Ralston, who's the CEO of the Nevada Independent, said that Catherine Cortez Masto could still eke out a win here.
Yeah, just to be clear, explain to us what the law is in terms of that mail vote. How long? It has to be postmarked by, I guess now yesterday at this point, by Tuesday. But if it's postmarked yesterday, it can arrive until when?
It can arrive until Saturday. And that's when, that's when they will continue counting those votes up to. And then 2 days after that, that's when signature curing happens. So just verifying that signatures are correct if something seems off or someone forgot to sign something. In total, election officials have about 10 days after the election day, so the 18th, to get everything counted and put out there.
Here's what's interesting, because you mentioned in Tabitha, you can speak to this as well. John, you had said mail-in ballots voting typically, is more positive for Democrats, but in this new environment, we don't know. And late mail-in ballots.
That's Arizona.
Favor,
Arizona.
There's
a tendency for the late arriving ballots to skew more Republican. In Nevada, I'm not sure we've seen enough to know whether that's the behavior, Tabitha, have we?
Yeah, we don't know for sure, but what I will say is, I was out at voting sites today, and a lot of Republican voters were dropping off their ballots in person. So, I think some people didn't want to mail it in. Some people didn't have time to cast their ballot on one of the voting machines, or, they don't trust them, even though it's shown that the voting machines are fine here and they're accurate, and they can't be tampered with. They did drop them off. So that may be something that we will see, especially in the rural areas of the state.
All right, Tabitha Mueller from the Nevada Independent, we appreciate your time. I know it's late or early, depending if you've gone to bed or just waking up, but we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So up next, the other big story is the undecided race for control of the House. Also, the results of governor's races. This is CNN special live coverage. And we're back. I'm Don Lemon. At this hour, neither party has won control of the House or the Senate. Nail-biter races all across this country, and votes are still coming in. I want to get back now to my colleague, Harry Enten. He's at the CNN Battleground desk. So Harry, I just want to see how election deniers did overall in these midterms, although everything isn't in yet. How'd they do?
Yeah, so let's look specifically at gubernatorial races, right? Because they're at the top of the ticket, and obviously elections are state-run exercises. So let's start off in the state of Arizona, which is really the only state where a full-blown election denier on the Republican side is actually competitive. Kerry Lake right now only down by 2 points. Obviously, as you and John have been talking about, a lot of vote is still left to be counted. But beyond Arizona, it was a very bad night for election deniers, at least in the gubernatorial races in blue and swing states. So let's go to Massachusetts, right? This is a state that you say, okay, it's a really blue state. But remember, it had a Republican governor for a long time in Charlie Baker. But here, Jeff Deal got blown out, losing by nearly 30 percentage points. It didn't sell in Massachusetts. How about Michigan, which, of course, is a perennial swing state? What happened there? Tudor Dixon losing by 8 points to Gretchen Whitmer, the Democratic candidate. Again, election denialism did not sell in a swing state like Michigan. How about Maryland, which, of course, is a blue state, but, of course, one that had a longtime Republican governor? What happened here? Dan Cox getting blown out, 22 points, down to Wes Moore, easily winning the Democratic candidate. And, of course, in Pennsylvania, which we've been talking about all night long, in that gubernatorial race, what happened? Doug Mastriano, one of the most full-blown election deniers, getting blown out in the state, losing by nearly 13 percentage points in a state that Joe Biden won by just over a percentage point. Election denialism in blue states that had previously elected Republican governors, and in swing states, for the most part, it just didn't sell, Don.
Thank you very much, sir. And as you say, we're going to have Wes Moore CNN this morning on Thursday, so make sure you tune in. Again, our thanks to Harry Enten. Harry, we'll get back to you. Caitlin, people are going to be analyzing this election for weeks, months to come, probably into 2024.
Yeah, and particularly what Harry was just talking about there, which was this Democratic strategy when it came to boosting these election deniers, essentially arguing that they would be easier to beat tonight. And this is something they took a lot of heat over, because the argument was, are you being hypocritical by saying democracy is at stake here, look what's on the line, you need to go out and vote Democrat, but then, previously helping boost these candidates. But for these people, the ones that Harry just laid out in New Hampshire, in Pennsylvania, In Michigan, it seems to have paid off as a strategy, at least.
Look, I think it's important to say that, first of all, while Democrats were hypocritical to push these candidates, that they were riding a wave within the Republican primaries themselves, right? I mean, this was not a total creation of Democratic outside spending. This was Donald Trump-backed candidates for the most part because there was an election lie litmus test within the Republican primary. And the question was, in this out-year election, could that be enough where they might win a general election? Because it's a dangerous game Democrats were playing there, and Republicans too. It looks like, at least in that northeast quadrant of the United States, the answer is a definitive no. And one of the most fascinating stats for me, and I'm obsessed with this, is independent voters. Independent voters went 49-47 for Democrats this year in an out-year, mid-year election. That is unheard of.
Why is that unheard of?
Because typically independents will swing against the party in power, usually by double digits. It's what we saw in 2010 and 2014 when independents went Republican to counterbalance the Obama years. It's in 2018, over 10 points towards Democrats. But this fact that they were narrowly for Democrats this year, and suburban voters, by the way, stuck Republican, that is fascinating. And I wonder if, in part, it's independent voters saying, I'm not going to follow that election denier kind of crazy into a general election.
Yeah, Neil, what stood out to you about this?
No, listen, I mean, election denialism is essentially Trumpism, right? I mean, it's the same thing. These were handpicked candidates by Donald Trump. He was on the phone at some point telling Blake Masters to lean into the election denialism. You saw some of these folks try to sort of airbrush their records from the primary where they were election denial folks, and then they sort of, I think the candidate in New Hampshire said, well, I've done a little bit more research and I don't,
Don
you know,
Bolduc. Which
exactly.
Trump is criticizing him for on Truth Social, saying
this is why he lost.
He had not done that because what he did was he questioned the results of the 2020 election, then he walked that back, and then he walked his walk back, if you can follow that.
It's an election denier two-step.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, I think Donald Trump has had a really terrible night, and we know that this is the way he wants to present himself should he run for re-election, based on the big lie, based on Joe Biden being illegitimately elected president. And we see in state after state that just a vast number of voters rejecting it.
Which is a victory for reality. Let's say that. Because that was one of the real questions going into this election. Could election deniers win a general election? We knew they could win a primary. Could they win a general election? In many cases, the answer seems to be a resounding no.
Yeah, and Biden gave 2 speeches on this, was in some ways criticized for focusing on it. Questioned, should this be something that's part of their closing message? But listen, it resonated with a lot of voters.
2 people still to watch, though, is Adam Laxalt, who, of course, signed on to that lawsuit over the 2020 election. He's the one running against Catherine Cortez Masto for that Senate seat that we are still watching with John Bourbon closely following Clark County. Also, of course, Carrie Lake, to see what happens to her in Arizona. She was the one that, when Trump was urging Blake Masters to keep pushing the election lies, he was like, well, look at what Carrie Lake's doing. She gets asked about her family, and Trump said she would bring up 2020 election. Stand by. We'll get back to you, too, for your analysis on all of this, because we have a lot of key Senate races, especially that one in Georgia. A big question is whether or not it is going to be headed for that December runoff, and whether or not former President Trump and President Biden will be campaigning there. Remember, they were absent on the campaign trail in the last several weeks in Georgia. We also have more projections in the race for control of the House. All of that is next.
Welcome back, and good morning, everyone. I'm Don Lemon. At this very early hour, the balance of power in the House, not yet decided. Republicans are leading by 20 seats, but still 20 away from that magic number of 218. You can see it up there on the board. Republicans have 198 right now, Democrats 178. Democrats picking up 3 spots there, and Republicans picking up 9 so far. Let's head over now to Mr. John Berman at the Magic Wall. John, you can keep us up to date. Bring us up to date on the balance of.
All right, as you just showed, this is the races that we projected right now. And the races we projected, Republicans control 198 of the seats, Democrats 178. Well, look at where Republicans are ahead. Well, Republicans are ahead right now. This would give them control of the U.S. House. We're not there yet. We've got to count all the votes. But if things keep going the way they are right now, they would get control. But look at that margin. It's barely anything. It's nowhere near what they were hoping for. It would be a Good night for them in the sense they take control of the U.S. House. A disappointing night in terms of expectations. I want to look at the competitive seats. 82 competitive seats in the country between CNN and Inside Elections project that. You can see Democrats are leading in 47, Republicans in 35. The Republican path, though, is much shorter. They only need to win 30 of the Republican seats. They're ahead right now in 35. So you can see they're doing what they need to do to take control, but not the night by any means that they were hoping for, Don. Let me show you some of the states that are very interesting at this hour. Let's look at New York, okay? One of the things I've been pointing out all night long, we live in New York, right? 10 competitive districts here we consider. 2 years ago, right now, Republicans are leading in 8 of them. 2 years ago, 8 of those districts were Democratic, just 2 Republicans. So Democrats, believe it or not, right now, their margin in the House is because they're underperforming in New York State. Go figure. Blue state right now. Another thing I want to show you is in Colorado. That's New Mexico, which is near Colorado, but not in fact Colorado. Let's go to Colorado. What I wanted to show you was that New Mexico is near Colorado.
It's early.
In Colorado, this is Lauren Boebert's seat. Lauren Boebert is a Republican firebrand, election denier. She is someone Democrats would love. I mean, they would just love to defeat her. And right now, she is trailing. She is trailing by, 4,000 votes, almost 5,000 votes with 88% in. I do want to caution Democrats not to get overexcited. One of the places where there's still quite a bit of vote to count, there's 86% in, is in Mesa County, which is the most populous county in the state. It's kind of her home base. She's got a healthy lead there. There's still votes to count. She could make up that margin, but a tight race for Lauren Boebert there. Another race I want to point out is I was just in New York. I was telling you about the problems Democrats are having in New York. Let me just go back there for one moment. This is the seat held by Sean Patrick Maloney, New York's 17th district, Westchester and other counties nearby. He's trailing by about a point, by 3,000 votes, 98% in. There is still more vote to be counted. Republicans would love to defeat him here. This would be a symbolic victory for them, taking out the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, part of what could be a good night for Republicans running in New York State.
And a redrawn district, by the way.
All the districts have been redrawn. He was largely in charge of trying to get a positive map for Democrats in New York State. He overreached, and Democrats ended up with a worse map, and he may be suffering for it there. Let me look at there are some places where Democrats could still flip seats that they're trailing in right now. When I say flip, I mean they could overtake the Republican there. Illinois, a Democratic race. We see 4 competitive districts here. 2 years ago, 4 of those would have been Biden. Right now, Democrats are trailing in 1. This is Illinois' 17th congressional district, largely redrawn. This would have been Cheri Bousteau's seat. She retired there. You can see the Democrat trailing by almost 3,000 votes. But when you dig down at the county level, you can see Moline here, which is Rock Island County, which is a Democratic plus 12 county. There are no votes there. So while this district right now looks red, you could see it go blue sometime in the next several hours.
You're very fancy, because when I lived there, we would call it Moline.
No,
you're right.
Moline.
You're right.
But again, we're watching this as the night goes on, or I guess we're now in the morning. Republicans stand, looks like they may gain control of the House, but not the night they were hoping for.
Yeah, certainly not. John Berman, thank you much. Thank you very much for standing by at the Magic Wall. We're standing by for a lot of things. This is not over yet, not by any stretch of the imagination. We're going to stand by as we await more votes in these key Senate races. We're going to compare the performance of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump as they could be on the verge of a 2024 matchup. We're back in moments. Good morning, everyone. Don Lemon here. The 2022 midterms may be giving us a big clue about the 2024 Republican presidential primary. Our Harry Enton is at the battleground desk. We talked a lot about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. What say you, sir?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think the big thing that's coming out of this midterm is that Democrats did so well, and I'm kind of going, okay, why did Democrats do so well despite the fact that Joe Biden's unpopular? Let's take a look, though, at the national polling that essentially looks at those who have a favorable view of only Biden, only Trump, Biden and Trump, neither Biden nor Trump. Look at that. Only 38% of voters had only a favorable view of Trump. When you add in that 1% that had a favorable view of both Biden and Trump, Donald Trump's favorability nationwide, just 39%. Now, I want to zone in on that 18%, right, that did not like Donald Trump, nor did they like Joe Biden. And what you see is that the Republicans were able to win there by 17 points in the National House vote. But historically speaking, if you had an unfavorable view of the incumbent, the presidential incumbent, that margin should be much, much wider. So it does seem to me that Donald Trump being in the minds of voters very much cost Republicans, at least when it came to the House nationally. Now, Trump may be unpopular, but what about Ron DeSantis, who easily, overwhelmingly won re-election? Look at his approval rating in the state of Florida. 58%, significantly higher than Donald Trump's favorable rating nationwide, which totaled up to 39%. And when it comes to actually running in 2024, let's take a look there. And what we see is that, yes, 45% of Florida voters, in fact, do want Ron DeSantis to run for president in 2024. The majority say no, 53%. But that 45%, compare that to Floridians' views of whether they wanted Donald Trump to run for president. And this, I think, gives you a real understanding of why Ron DeSantis is so strong. Look at that. Just 33% of Floridians wanted Donald Trump to run for president. The vast majority said no. So in Florida, where the voters know each of those candidates equally well, Ron DeSantis is much higher up when it comes to 2024.
You know who's not going to like that?
No.
Donald Trump won't like it.
Thank you
very much, Harry Enten. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Papa, here's it. Listen, actually, you guys have been talking in your group about this a little bit. My question is, why then do Republicans still keep hanging on to Donald Trump? I don't understand it, because if you look at what's happening now, the very vocal part, right, of the Republican Party, but not necessarily in general the part of the Republican Party that is winning elections.
I think it's the question of the morning, outside of, by the way, who's going to take those 4 Senate seats and where the House is going to go. Let's ask our team. Alice Stewart, to you. Money talks, and you're hearing from big Republican donors about where the money is going. What does that tell you about DeSantis? Is Ron DeSantis the next Republican nominee for president of the United States?
He's certainly rising in stature after tonight. And big money donors are telling me tonight they are ready to turn the page on Donald Trump. They now see he is an anchor on the party. And this is not just people that have not been supportive of Trump. These are Trump allies that have put big money into
That's a critical difference.
It's a big difference. They're realizing, look, under Trump, we lost the House, the Senate, and the White House. And now we're in a critical midterm election, and his appointed candidates have lost significantly. The key thing with the DeSantis-Trump numbers that we saw tonight, that is imperative, and it's good for DeSantis, not good for Trump. That's a snapshot in time. I always like to look at the trends, and you look at the Real Clear Politics trends over the last few months. Donald Trump has lost in his numbers, and DeSantis has gained. And we're looking at Trump has lost about 5 points over the last 3 months. DeSantis has gained. And so if that trend continues, that levels out. And part of it because DeSantis has been a proven leader, he's a good fundraiser, and now he has risen to the stature of earning a nickname from Donald Trump. And that right there says a lot.
Yes. Maria, I want you to talk about the Latino vote, because you've been very dialed into this both nationwide and in Florida. And the fact that our exit polls show that DeSantis won Latino votes in this election by 13 points, and contrast that with the fact that in 2020, Trump trailed Biden on the Latino vote by 7 points. That is a huge, that's a 20-point spread. That's a huge spread.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, like I said before, the Democratic Party has a lot of work to do with the Latino vote in Florida. And, you know, DeSantis should be given kudos for that, right? For reaching out to Latinos in Florida, very specifically, underscoring that the Latino vote is not monolithic. It's very different in Florida than it is everywhere else. Very, very heavy Cuban American, which traditionally has been conservative Republican. I think that was a big part of what happened. But DeSantis also got a lot of Puerto Rican voters. And that is traditionally a Democratic.
Not just Cuban,
exactly. But I want to say something about what Alice said. She talked about really big donors, and that's important. But I think the challenge for the Republican Party is Donald Trump may not care about the big donors, because he has this list that is like a gamillion people.
Gamillion, that's a new one. Those are the words that come at 5:40 in the morning.
Exactly. That give him $5, $10, $30, $100. And as long as he has that, I don't think he's going to feel really all that beholden to these big donors.
I want you guys to look at this. Control Room, if we could pull up on the screen what Scott Jennings, is a CNN contributor, but also a Republican strategist, very close to Mitch McConnell tweeted tonight, this is what he writes, quote, how could you look at these results tonight and conclude Trump has any chance of winning a national election in 2024? Mia Love, as a Republican former member of Congress, what do you think?
Well, I've been saying this. I have been saying this over and over and over again. And this is just from facts and evidence that you have seen play out. One of the things that Ron DeSantis has done is that he has spoken, he's actually taken a cue from the Glenn Youngkin playbook. He is all about Florida all the time, every time you see him. It's all about the local politics, all about caring more for the people you represent than the person that you think represents your party. It is, again, people put way too much credit and effort into a person because they think that that's the leader of the party. Why not hold Trump beholden to the principles and the platform of the Republican Party?
One of the things, Paul, that I do find interesting, though, to Mia's point, and that might be a little bit counter to it, is the fact that, you know, Ron DeSantis has also really capitalized on culture wars that make national headlines. For example, look at the fight with Disney, for example, right? That's just one of them. At the same time, leading through the last hurricane has also shown when you can, you know, has shown the country what he would be like as a leader of the nation in a crisis like that.
And I think most Floridians think he did a good job during that hurricane. By the way, he worked with Joe Biden. No, the Republicans all hate Joe Biden. No, he said, I owe Florida first. So I think he did a very good job there, and that helps. But DeSantis has done something that Trump has never done. He got more votes than a Democrat. Twice. He won very narrowly in 2018. He won a landslide today. Donald Trump ran for president twice, never once got more votes than the Democrat. He's the only president in 90 years who has lost his party, the White House, the House, and the Senate, all in just 4 years. There's a word for that in my business. Loser. He's the biggest loser in American politics. Now, Republicans have to decide. If Mia and Alice, they want their party, again, to be a coalition of ideas and about policies. But right now, it is a cult of personality, and it's politically killing the Republicans.
It is.
And you know, but you know what else I think is the challenge for DeSantis? When is he going to announce? If Trump is going to announce on the 15th, DeSantis just won the governorship.
I wonder if tonight changes the 15th. I don't know.
We'll do it tomorrow then.
Well, all right, stand by, everyone. Thank you all. We'll get back to you very soon. We are getting the results on several ballot measures across the United States. Big issues like marijuana legalization, abortion rights, minimum wage. We'll be back with that. This is CNN Special Live coverage.
We've looked very closely at the numbers. We feel very confident that there's no way that they can really make up that gap. But you know, I'm not going to declare victory until all the numbers are in. But I just want to give you guys the sense that this race is over. You know. Quite honestly, I think anybody looking at the numbers would have to admit that fact. But for whatever reason, they're not willing to call it.
There is Ron Johnson there in Wisconsin. Not exactly claiming victory there, but just enough to keep the supporters happy there. So we're going to talk about what's happening in Wisconsin. But let me just reset for you here. 4 key Senate races still undecided at this hour, including the one in Wisconsin between Mandela Barnes and Ron Johnson. You heard Ron Johnson saying, hey, look, we looked at the numbers. Not yet sure. We don't believe right now that they can make it up, but I don't want to declare victory right now. Let's go now to CNN's Lucy Kavanaugh. She joins us now from Milwaukee with the very latest. So we heard from Ron Johnson. What are you hearing there as you're on the scene in Wisconsin?
Well, it's been a fascinating night in a deeply divided, truly purple state. We have two-term incumbent Republican Senator Ron Johnson in a challenge, facing off a challenge by the Lieutenant Democratic Governor Mandela Barnes in a race that was incredibly competitive, with 94% of the vote in, though Johnson ahead by something like 33,000 votes, which is a significant number in a state where races often come down to the wire. And as you heard in that soundbite there, Johnson not declaring victory, but basically declaring victory. We have yet to hear from Barnes. We've also yet to have the race be officially called. But keep in mind that Wisconsin was considered the Democrats' best chance of flipping a Republican seat. Johnson was not particularly popular here. Mandela Barnes initially had a slight lead in the polls in the initial months, but we saw that lead evaporate in a barrage of negative advertising throughout recent weeks. But of course, it's not all bad news for the Democrats here in this state. Governor Tony Evers has won his re-election bid. That is, at least according to CNN projections, against his Republican challenger, preserving the Democrats' veto power in a state where the legislation was seeking veto-proof supermajorities. And if the race is actually called for Senator Ron Johnson, this would be the first time in 24 years that we've seen a split ticket here in Wisconsin. Guys?
Before I let you go, pardon my manners. I should have said good morning. My mom is at home going, don't be rude. Say good morning. I raised you better than that. Good morning to you.
It's still night here for us.
But good morning anyways. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Let's head over to, speaking of good morning, sir. How are you?
I was nervous you weren't going to say good morning to me. I was going to call you out. I would say, don't you have something you want to say first?
My mom would say, I'm not the only one in here. Say good morning. So how are we? Where are we
All right,
in Wisconsin?
this is Wisconsin, where things stand in the Senate race right now. You see Ron Johnson ahead by 32,000 votes, about 1.2%, 94% in. Where is there still vote to be counted? Let me take this down to 90. I know you like when I do this. I do the slide, the electric slide right there. These are the counties that have less than 90% in. You can see this one right here, Dunn County, a smaller Republican county. Ron Johnson could pick up some votes here, but not very much. You're not talking about tons of vote there. Rock County down here on the border. Mandela Barnes has a small lead there, 84% in. He might be able to pick up some vote here. The biggie where the votes still are, is Milwaukee County, or Milwaukee, as they say in Wayne's World. You can see Mandela Barnes has a huge lead. He leads by 41%, which is outperforming what Joe Biden did there. He would need to pick up, essentially, in Milwaukee County alone, the overall vote total, the 32,000 votes that he is trailing Ron Johnson. It's a tough order, tall order, to be sure. This race has not been projected yet, largely, I assume, because Milwaukee is still out there. And as we just heard from Lucy, CNN has projected that the winner of the governor's race will be Democrat Tony Evers. You can see he's 83,000 votes ahead. So there is a difference between Tony Evers and Mandela Barnes. Evers 83,000 ahead, Barnes 32,000 votes behind.
All right. John Berman, thank you very much. And by the way, good morning.
Good morning to you.
We're getting a little punchy here in Milwaukee. So votes are still coming in. The balance of power in Congress still up for grabs. So stand by, everyone. We've got lots more. Our coverage continues right after a break.